Okay, Doovid here. We are live. I planned on starting at 9:30. Church of Entropy. Hopefully, we'll be joining any minute. I had expected, as usual, these shows with Adam usually go longer, but he needed to bow out a little bit earlier for a family event. So hopefully, we'll continue the discussion on Thursday. Hopefully, it was a good program. I'll check it back later. I wanted a little bit more like of an abstract metaphysical. I'm trying to, kind of like train Adam and Pilpul, maybe book him for some debates and kind of understand kind of like an abstract, kind of like Charles, a lot of internet personalities kind of like keep on repeating their understanding as opposed to aiming for a deeper understanding. So Doovid's more an independent scholar who maybe going to put the link in the chat if anyone was watching it and wants to hop on. So let me show. I had prepared. I thought. I wanted to speak to Adam. I'm not surprised that it came out this way. Because that's the way he does his show, and obviously he has a pretty big following, and is definitely a bigger media streamer than me. But I had wanted to do a more intellectual understanding of the historical Jesus. So I think I relatively understand Adam's theory pretty well. And so, as opposed to Adam just trying to prove his theory to me, which, I disagree with, or to his audience that he's, streams about all the time, I wanted to talk more about, like an abstract understanding to understand the historical Jesus better on a deeper level. So I had made this diagram and I put it in my Discord the other day and kind of like a multiple truth hypothesis diagram. I should be on with Theology Unleashed and Ben Watkins again next week, Sunday, and we'll be talking about the soul. And so I have another diagram that I went over on Week in Review. But, I'm just trying to show the possibilities for who was this character Jesus and what is the rise of Christianity. So just mention real quick, I just took this course on the teaching company Bart Ehrman, and I have listened to all of the Bart Ehrman courses. My father has the full set, and I'm a member of their server. So the recent course, The Triumph of Christianity by Bart Ehrman, and he goes over 24 courses, 12 hours, the Christian conquest of Rome and the pagan view, the Jewish view, the early Christian missions, Paul, the apostles, the growth of the church, the conversion of Constantine. And you could see that Bart Ehrman has a bunch of courses. My father owns in CDs quite a few of these. He's been listening for a while. The Historic Jesus, the New Testament, History of the Bible, the Making of the New Testament Canon, the Great Controversies of Early Christian History, How Jesus Became God, After the New Testament, the Writings of the Apostolic Fathers, From Jesus to Constantine, A History of Early Christianity, Lost Christianities, Christian Scriptures, and the Battles over Authentication, and the most recent, The Triumph of Christianity. In reality, I've listened to almost all of the great lectures, not just Bart Ehrman, all of the courses from the teaching company. So I kind of wanted to up Adam's level of scholarship a little bit. So let me see this notification. Okay, so let's look at this diagram. I thought Adam, people need to be trained in abstract thought. So Adam has a theory, and I was on Charles Moskowitz earlier saying Adam's theory is not new. That so to say, the Jews are behind Christianity in whatever way. That theory goes all the way back to the Rome. Tacitus, I think, or Cicero himself thought that Christianity was a Jewish psyop. There were elements within the Nazi Party that thought Christianity was a Jewish psyop. There were always people who interpreted Christianity to be some sort of psyop, so to say, psychological operation of the Jews that the Jews are behind. And so, Doovid promoting the multiple truth hypothesis, I'm going to look at the various possibilities because we don't actually know what happened. So, like, that's what I was trying to express to Adam, that there's a lot of doubt and a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of various pieces of education and information, evidence. And, so if Adam is just collecting the evidence that supports his hypothesis, that's fine because he's promoting a school and hypothesis. But for debate, for honest conversation, should be more honest. So I looked at certain aspects of the historical Jesus. I have 7 items listed in subpoints of various possibilities, and there could be much more. So just to get a feel. So was Jesus an actual person, character that existed in history? And so I got Claire here. So I'll finish this up. Even if you want to hop on, I'll even let Claire hop on. But let me go over my presentation that I wanted to go over on No More News. But it says platform maybe next week. So, like the recent book Zealot, I think Reza Aslan, who had the CNN special on Jesus the Zealot. So if there was a historical Jesus, who was this Jesus? And could you look at him kind of like a rabbi? And then if he was a rabbi, I gave a few different possibilities for how you could understand if there was a Jesus and he was a rabbi. So he could have been like Reza Aslan, a nationalist, a zealot, where he was trying to be some sort of nationalistic leader of the Jews, or revive his understanding of correct Judaism, with the stories like overthrowing the money changers in the temple, standing up to corrupt leadership, arguing with the Pharisees, but some sort of rabbi that became a nationalistic zealot leader that, instead of just being a scholar or local community leader, and without taking the institutional path towards leadership, that decided to take it to Jerusalem and build up his own followers. Also a miracle man, like the Baal Shem Tov, saying that there's many miracle men in Jewish history. The New Testament records that Jesus was a miracle man. So, I mean, he could have been both. Like, a lot of these could have been conglomerate, all of the above. But at the time, there were probably a whole bunch of rabbis that were, zealots. There were probably a whole bunch of rabbis that were miracle men, healed the sick. Even today, if you're in a Hasidic, ultra-Orthodox culture, it's very common to, have miracle men, rabbis that you go to pray for you or write amulets, and could do miraculous events. And then also a prophet, like our text, generally the prophetic canon is closed with Ezra and the rebuilding of the Second Temple, the creation of the men of the Great Assembly. But like a Maggid having a special connection to God, like Yosef Karo, the Ramchal, or Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, that even Maimonides writes about, so to say, the process of an ordinary rabbi rising to the level of prophet, to the level of a false Messiah. Was Jesus a Messiah hopeful who had thought that he would be Messiah, and his followers thought that he would be Messiah? And then from a Judaic perspective, he was a false Messiah because he didn't fulfill the task. That, obviously the temple was destroyed, the Romans weren't overthrown, and the signs that most Jews thought would have happened did not happen under Jesus. So just an understanding, if there was a historic Jesus, he could have been, like a miracle man. He could have been, just a rabbi who aspired to be a prophet, aspired to be Messiah, like the Lubavitch Rebbe, the Talmud states that you should serve your local rabbi like he might become Messiah. So for a generic rabbi to be some like messianic aspirant is somewhat abnormal. But even in modern days, like the Lubavitch Rebbe, but not even the Lubavitch Rebbe, there's probably multiple rabbis that you could call messianic aspirants. And, God forbid, I was in Jerusalem. I met a whole bunch of Jews who thought they were Messiah. God forbid, but like you hang out in synagogues or different places, you could bump into a whole bunch of crazy Jews who think that maybe I'm Messiah. So look at just possibilities. I have number 2 here, fake, that Jesus did not in fact exist. There was no historical Jesus. And so if there was completely made up, that there was no character similar to Jesus, all of the stories, the lineage was completely made up. None of it ever happened. And they're all legends that came up later. That's pretty unlikely. I'm just putting like a multiple truth hypothesis of the various possibilities. We don't know. There's not enough evidence. And so I'm just giving the range of the possibilities. More likely is a conglomerate, that Jesus is a conglomeration of stories from multiple characters. And maybe they were various rabbis and, who they were, or Gentiles, or various things we'll get to. But and most experts would claim that Jesus is some sort of conglomerate figure. In a lot of ways, like the Baal Shem Tov, Yisroel Baal Shem Tov, a lot of historians believe that there was factually a Yisroel Baal Shem Tov, that lived in Mezbich and built up the disciples. But in reality, that the legends of the Baal Shem Tov is a conglomeration of multiple different rabbis and miracle men. And at some point, all of the legends combined behind one figure. So that's why legends adapted. It's a conglomerate of adapted legends that all became centered around one person. And like Amir Zar here in Detroit tweeted out, Jesus was a Palestinian. So the possibility that Jesus was a Gentile, that there was a historical Jesus figure, and that the Jesus figure was not in fact Jewish. And just I'm giving the various possibilities, so that it could have been Samaritan, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, mixed-blooded. So just you're giving the possibilities. Obviously, the Bible says Jesus is Jewish. It has its lineage. But from a historical possibility, that historically there could have been a Gentile usurper that claimed to be Jewish, or it could have been a Gentile miracle person that did certain things. And then the Jews later thought that this miracle man, leader, great leader, was Jewish when he was factually something else. So keep on going through this. Number 4, I put avatar, like the Hindu, like some sort of spiritual force, like from an Eastern belief. A lot of Chinese, Indian believers in Jesus will look at Jesus as an avatar, meaning that Jesus was some incarnate form of God, a deity in human form, like Krishna, like one of the Greek or Roman or pagan gods. That Jesus was not a Jew, was not a human, but was some form of higher force that took the form of Jesus and did these things that are recorded in the New Testament and by the legends of the historical figure Jesus. And I put the avatar could have been biblical in nature. The force that became Jesus could have been some sort of biblical force of the God Hashem, the God Jehovah of the Bible, either a true force representative of Jehovah, like maybe early Christians may have understood, say fully human, fully God, or the other understandings that wasn't human at all, but that the avatar was the same source of the earlier Hebrew prophets and of the miracles that are mentioned in the Hebrew prophets. Or it could have been a pagan avatar, whatever reason, like a Greek or Roman deity took the form of a Jew and led people to believe that he was in the lineage of the Hebrew prophets. Or like conspiracy theory, could have been alien, that Jesus could have been alien from another planet, some sort of alternative universe, or some unknown force. Like for whatever reason, some higher force came to the earth as Jesus and did these things that are recorded in the New Testament. So I'm just giving the various possibilities of the historic Jesus. We got Mark and Jennifer, so I'm adding them. Hopefully they'll let me finish my
Hello.
presentation
Hello.
here, and then if Mark or Jennifer wants to comment on the historic Jesus, and then we're going to look at their debate preparation. So I'm just going over, like the possibilities of if there was a historic Jesus, who was this Jesus? So as I mentioned, Jesus could have been, typical Judaic rabbi. If one of you is typing in the background, if that's you, Mark, I don't mind muting.
Sorry.
So that Jesus could have just been a typical rabbi that was made to somehow made into this legend that became the religion of Christianity. Jesus could be a fake character, that there actually was no Jesus, like I discussed with Adam, and the opinion of many later European rabbis that there was actually no Jesus. Jesus could have been a Gentile impostor. Jesus could have been some sort of avatar force of some spiritual force that could be explained. What was the origin of the spiritual force? Was it some sort of biblical force, an alien, a pagan force of another known tradition, or some unknown force for whatever reason came down to earth and took this form, Jesus in the form of a Jew, but was in fact some unknown force. And so I also have the question of the crucifixion. If there's a historic figure, there's the crucifixion, the resurrection are two historic events that are recorded in the Gospels, and you could either be historic, legend, made up, or conglomerate. Like I said, a lot of people were crucified in ancient Rome. There could have been a lot of the previous characters. There could have been zealot rabbis, miracle men, false messiahs. It's possible that there were a lot of zealot rabbis that were crucified in the time. It's possible that there were a lot of Jews named Jesus in the time of the Second Temple, and it's possible tens of different Jesus zealots were crucified in some sort of conglomerate figure, or like Bart Ehrman suggests that no, it's likely that there was one historic Jesus figure who was factually crucified. And then you have the question of the resurrection, which I'm not going to get too much into, but say, is it adapted legend? Was it completely made up? That whoever claims the resurrection happened was just made up? Was it a mass delusion where they didn't make it up, but it didn't happen, but there were a lot of people who believed it happened? And so if it's true that that also was it biblical, that if the resurrection is somehow true, that there was a Jesus figure who was crucified and resurrected, was it biblical in line with the Hebrew prophets, or some other force that for whatever reason chose to take the form of Jesus in line with the Hebrew prophets, but was actually some sort of alternative force? And then the question of the disciples, the spread of the church. Was it coordinated or was it uncoordinated? Did Jesus have a set of disciples? Did they go out spreading the message? Did they know each other? Did they work together? Or was it like Paul, a mass delusion that Jesus didn't exist, but somehow a whole bunch of people decided that they thought he existed and spread out? And then saying, was it coordinated or uncoordinated? That if this Jesus figure is a conglomerate of many figures, and then people, maybe they don't know, there's a few disciples that followed a few different Jesus type characters, but they kind of conglomerated together, and it's like, oh, we're probably talking about the same event or person, or it's later. And then from Adam's perspective, you're talking about a psyop, that for whatever reason there would have been a conspiracy that maybe Jesus didn't exist, and like the elders of Zions or a bunch of rabbis got together and saying, we're going to create this fictional Jesus character in order to create a religion for Gentiles. So I wanted to classify the possibilities, and I could add more. I could add the names of scholars, and you could fill in the pieces of evidence that support or oppose the various understandings. But if you're going to say it's a psyop, was it a psyop because Jesus never existed? Was it a psyop, adaptation of a conglomerate characters, the disciples, did they coordinate the psyop? Was it some sort of delusional psyop? Did people say, okay, there's this delusion? Was it just power? For whatever reason, people never heard of Jesus, and they just decided that they're like, okay, I'll push this because it's just something to push a vehicle for power or meaning in life. So these are all important questions. I didn't really expect Adam to discuss this so much, although I did send him this. I thought we were going to look at it, but we didn't end up. So let me just look on the right real quick. So, I was looking at group strategy, who benefits, which is really Adam's perspective, because he's not really looking at so much, he's taking pieces of evidence from various texts that support his psyop narrative, but he's more focusing on the who benefits, and he thinks that Jews benefit from Christianity, therefore Christianity must be some sort of psyop from Jews. But to do a real scholarly analysis, you have to say, well, what are the different groups at play, and how would they have benefited? And then Jews, obviously, there's a lot of sectarian groups of Jews. Just the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and there's a whole bunch more. And then also short term, long term, if there were groups of Jews that were pushing Christianity, would have been for short-term or long-term benefit, and it also could have been Roman pagan cults, and Romans, did they political or economic benefit? And obviously, Jewish groups could have pushed it for political or economic purposes. There could have been non-Roman Gentiles living in the Roman Empire, and also the higher forces that what caused the spread of Christianity, who benefits. And so, Adam largely going off, well, the Jews benefit from Christianity the most, so therefore the Jews must have, created Christianity as some sort of psyop, kind of like an anachronistic historical interpretation that's assuming that, looking at present day today, from his perspective, that Jews are the biggest beneficiary of Judaism, to say that Judaism must have been created by, conspiracy of Jews all the way back then. And then obviously, like earlier, the higher forces, that were there higher forces that caused this to happen. It wasn't a conspiracy of man. It was a conspiracy of higher forces. And it could have been, if you're atheistic, it could have just been like economic, geological, environmental things, or you're talking about spiritual.
Or Rome being a cesspit.
Well, so I mentioned, I was saying that I'm talking higher force. That would be a naturalistic higher force, but you're talking about a spiritual higher force, like one of the pagan deities that was the force behind Christianity, like a Mark Brahman type interpretation.
I just imagine Mark Brahman doing the Boris penis twirl. No, I doubt that. But
yeah, I mean, God forbid. I'm trying to be serious about this here.
I am too. God forbid science is humor is a science, but please.
In terms of scholarship, and so you could go to university and study this stuff from a secular perspective. You could go to theological school. It also mentioned like the demiurge, like Philo, or the Greek force, that the demiurge, some force of progress, used Judaism and Christianity, not specifically per se for the Jews or Christianity, but just a vehicle for progress. It's like the demiurge, from the Philo understanding, the demiurge as the force of progress, so that who benefits, and so whatever reason the force of progress just chose to use the vehicle of the Jews, or chose to use the vehicle of Christianity, or whatever tool was available at hand. And then like Adam, again, this canonization, he's quoting various texts and saying, well, according to these schools, it's just an ancient document. Is it authoritative? And the question of how did this stuff become canonized, Bart Ehrman, very in-depth in his understanding of the canonization process. There's a lot of scholarship on the canonization, who was involved in the canonization, what role did Jews spread out over the Roman Empire play in the spread and canonization, Rome historic forces, all various questions that we didn't really get into. And then I also, the last part, the theological implications, the bottom right corner there, generally Jesus, you have the historical event of the destruction of the temple and the end of animal sacrifice, and Jews coping with the fact that we no longer have a temple and could no longer bring animal sacrifices. In the early Christian movement, that would have been almost all Jews, probably devout Jews, that might have looked, say, Jesus as the final sacrifice, that we don't need to rebuild the temple and offer sacrifices again because Jesus is this final sacrifice. And then this universalization aspect, that you could have tribal concepts like a group strategy that could be specific to one group, Jews or Romans or pagan cult. And this strategy gets universalized to now that this strategy, which was a Jewish strategy, becomes the dominant strategy for all nations, or the process, or it could have been inverse, where the Judaic strategy was really a different group strategy that got supplanted into Judaism. So these are aspects I would have liked to talk about more related. And so, like, Adam, if he doesn't just want to preach his school and understanding of the historic Jesus and like a Jewish psyop, to more classification of the schools and the various pieces of evidence. And you have Claire's here, like the Noahide movement, a lot of understanding that Jesus in Christianity could have been a vehicle to preach the Noahide movement. The Jews really wanted to spread Noahidism, and so we never really wanted the concept of Jesus as Messiah to grow on. But Jesus as Messiah was popular and was spreading fast, so that we, as Jews, used Christianity as an attempt to spread the Noahide movement, which is kind of like the Maimonidean approach, that Christianity is somewhat of a double-edged sword vehicle of the God of the Jews, and that it spreads the Noahide movement, possibly the prophecies that we think are going to happen at the other days, but it does it under a messenger in a religion that we think is false, and also could have been Roman purposes. Obviously, the Roman Constantine was the one that converted to Christianity, and the universalization, the unifying the empire under Christianity, just because it was useful. So those were the notes that I made that we didn't really cover at all.
Yeah, I really liked the way you were leading that convo, and at the end made it clear that the whole anecdotes from the Talmud thing, I don't want to say it sounds as crazed as that fellow moron, but there's a limit to what quotes, unqualified quotes from religious doctrine, that's across the board, limit to how salient those points are. And I think you made that point well. And encouraged him to go further with his research, which was also nice to see. So that was what I took away from it. Otherwise, it did largely seem to be a repetition of things I'd heard before, but all in all, a little tighter rhetoric on your end. Good job.
Yeah, if he's not trained in abstract thought, or if he's not interested, like, he could just be, he's got his message that he wants to get out there. And, if he doesn't want like a Pilpul lesson to see where does his understanding fit in with the various schools, that's fine. Because, that's what most people do. They come up, like, at least he came up with an idea that's more than most people, and he's pushing that idea. But it's that more independent scholar. I know what I was trained. I have my personal beliefs, but like, I'm trained in debate and abstract thought. So at least I could I try to accurately understand the opposition's position. And then if you wanted a rigorous analysis of the evidence, is okay, like, this is what I believe in, even though the evidence doesn't really support that much what I believe in, but that's what I believe in, and that's what I'm going with, as opposed to saying, like, no, I follow the logic and the evidence, and I'm going to go with the direction of the evidence. So I'm going to examine all of the various possibilities, and then I'm going to follow the school that the evidence supports the strongest, which is probably a human nature, that humans don't really operate in that manner. We look to validate what we're already doing, as opposed to seek out truth. And then, then obviously identity, like, my identity as a Jew, I already dedicated almost all of my life to Judaism. that even if somehow someone was able to show me that I'm wrong, I would probably still stick with my identity, even if you so to say it's false. And there could be a greater logic to that also, just like Adam is rushing off to some sort of Christmas party because that's his group strategy. And like generically what I usually say, like if it makes you a better person, religion of any form, even if it's false, could make you a better person. Ritual, belief in a higher power, just like Jennifer booked me and talking dualism. So it's like, well, I'm a Hasidic Jew, and because my understanding of Hasidic Judaism is dualistic, I'm a dualist. And then you could look at someone who's a Christian, a Hindu, philosopher or whatever that's also a dualist, and say philosophically our understanding of the soul and the inner working of the spiritual and material realm is the same. And so that's a certain level of abstract thought where you say, okay, this person from this tradition and this person from this other tradition have a similar concept of spiritual ideas, but obviously they're part of the different belief systems. That's why I created the multiple truth hypothesis, to try to help people navigate these ideas. Like I was debating Zoubida so often, and various people is like, let's agree to disagree. So okay, we disagree on this part, and we could agree to disagree and move on. And then after a certain time, we might have a list. Look, like me and Mark, we disagree on evolution. We don't have to argue about evolution every single time we talk. We could agree to disagree about evolution, but we could still see there's a lot of stuff we still agree on, and we could have conversation.
I mean, we could.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of like interfaith or anything. But there's the purpose of a multiple truth hypothesis, is to help people, really for multiculturalism and interfaith, to navigate these difficulties. Let's understand what we agree on and what we disagree on, and then if we have to live in a multicultural society, that will help us do that to the best of our ability by understanding each other.
Well, I think that's fine, sort of epistemologically, but sort of as far as sort of your an ontology goes, do you think there is sort of multiple truths as far as sort of metaphysical truths?
I'm generally saying that truth is probably beyond the ascertainment of humans. That we say we could have a likelihood that certain truths are substantially more likely than others. And so if you have someone, so to say, let's say you prove me wrong, and then I still keep on doing it, and say, well, it's my identity. That's my ancestors did it. They could have been wrong. It could have been dumb, but I'm still going to do it because it's my identity, or it's still possible. And I think you find that changing a person's opinion rarely happens. It usually takes a process, and it starts from understanding, like, whoa, this other school seems a lot more likely than my school, but my school still is possible. The other one's just more likely to eventually reaching a point like we're gonna hopefully go in detail prep for your flat Earth debate. And if the flat earthers are saying, well, maybe whatever the percentage is, like if they think right now it's 50% flat Earth, 50% spherical or mainstream, and then after the debate or after a series of debate, they're looking, well, 2% flat Earth, 98%, and even at some point like 99.9%. But like to actually know the truth, I'm saying there's so many unknowns, there's so many empirical epistemological problems that basically anything is possible, and that you could claim, even from the multiple truth hypothesis, like a Schrodinger wave equation, that there's a tiny percent possibility, even if infinitesimally small, that any crazy idea is true.
Well, yeah, but I guess I take it more from a logic standpoint, that sort of it's a dichotomy, that the globe is a great example, or the world, I guess, if you're a flat earther, it could be a flat world. But I think that sort of metaphysically speaking, it's either going to be flat or not flat. And as far as philosophical logic is concerned,
physically speaking, Mark, not metaphysically.
Yes.
Metaphysics
could
would be
also-
what predicts the shape of the Earth.
Well, even just to mention, it could also be both, or it could be in some sort of quasi-transferring state. I mean, so like from a multiple truth hypothesis, you would say there's an infinite amount of possibilities, and then you would have some sort of, so to say, like wave equation that would have percentages, so that most of the infinite possibilities would basically be 0%. Like okay, like that like that the world doesn't actually exist, that we're on the back side of a turtle, or any crazy idea that you could think of. You could say any of these ideas have a chance of being true, but those chances are going to limit at 0, and then you might have something like that. The mainstream physical understanding that we're on, basically a close to spherical planet that has in the high 90s, and then like if there's a second option, I don't know if you say okay that the spherical options in the high 90s and flat Earth is in the low ones or even less than 1%, and then you're going to have an infinite amount of other possibilities, and then all the other empirical questions, like maybe we don't even exist, maybe it's a projected universe, maybe we're in a dream, and all these various things that you could be used to say, well, maybe even though all the evidence looks like it's like a sphere, but if the world is just a projection or we're just in a dream anyways, then your proof's not really a proof. And so from that perspective, there's, I don't think there's anything that you could do within science, the problem of empiricism, that will take the doubt to 0.
Well, science never takes the doubt to 0. It's not what it's for.
So
I get what you're saying.
If you're in a school, you're so like, I'm a flat earther. I've been a flat earther for decades. Even though you've demonstrated that the chance of you being right is exponentially higher than the chance of me being right. What's the cost benefit? What of me being wrong? So if it's like religion, like eternal damnation, like a Pascal's wager, versus like flat Earth, well, what's the real danger of me being wrong? To some extent, like nothing, a little bit of embarrassment, or if they take a journey that they're going to fall off, but to some extent there's no real danger of being wrong by declaring the Earth is flat for your average person. But religion has more practicality. That is that if you're a Christian, like Adam Green is out there saying Christianity is a false religion, and so if you're a Christian, then that puts you in a dilemma. Do you stop being a Christian even if it's your family tradition? And then what's the cost benefit ratio, like a cost benefit? If the other options are atheism or other religions, and you're looking at potential for there being a higher force that might reward or punish, or an afterlife or reincarnation of the various possibilities, that you would have to look at it like Pascal's wager. But I say multiple truth hypothesis in theory, if I could develop it further, would kind of have the infinite, there would be an infinite or many numbers of uncertainties, and then would we use the best of our ability to derive some sort of likelihoods in each of the scenarios, and it might even be like a Markov chain or a Bayesian analysis, where you're going to have a whole series of probabilities, and then you have to multiply it out, that this unknown coupled by this unknown coupled by this unknown, for what action should I take.
I personally don't like Pascal's wager, and I don't like to evaluate the truth on what's best, or the consequentialism. I think that's so. I don't mind the idea of there being sort of a nebulous probability system of what the actual truth is, but I must admit I lean towards empiricism, and that's fine if you don't. I just find it to be a sort of violation of non-contradiction to say that the Earth could be both things at once. I don't mind if it changes state or whatever. That's fine, or if it's a nebulous probability system of it could be this and could be that and could be the other. But to say it is both flat and a globe at the same time seems to be a violation of the laws of logic, in particular the law of non-contradiction.
Yeah, but I'd say, okay, what's the penalty for violating the laws of logic?
Well, what's the penalty? We lose all sense of coherence within our understanding of the universe or reality in general.
Well, I'm saying, what's the penalty for not understanding reality? So to say, let's say that I follow a false religion, but I'm an upstanding citizen. So I'm saying, what's the penalty? If it's a practical thing like following the law, to say, okay, if you're not planning on traveling long distance, or putting satellites into space, there might practically be no implication to you whether you believe the globe is flat or spherical, as opposed to something like the law. Like, do you believe the law exists? And then you have the choice of breaking or following the law. Like, not talking like a ahimsa principle, but let's say like a stoplight. You're like, I don't believe that there is such a thing as law enforcement, so I'm going to run the stop sign. But then maybe there's a police officer, and if I've ran the stop sign a bunch of times and never been pulled over, so I'd say I don't believe this entity of law enforcement exists, or such say the ahimsa principle, where there's a practicality or like a health implication of science related to medicine or health or daily habits versus like practically, are you going to say, is it possible a person could believe incorrectly that the world is flat and have no negative consequences in their day-to-day life?
Well, I think believing in something has no impact on whether it's true or not. I mean, I could believe the police don't exist all that I wanted and have a sincere and absolute genuine conviction that the police don't exist. But if I run that red light and red light camera catches me or a police officer is nearby, it doesn't change the fact that I'm going to get arrested in reality. I think that sort of we're getting mixed up.
Probability. I remember I was young, and people got a license and didn't, neighborhood didn't want to stop at a red light. It's sure. Like, no, I mean, like 9 out of 10 times, a red light maybe an intersect, but a stop sign 9 out of 10 times, maybe even 49 out of 50 times, if you run the stop sign, there's not going to be a cop there. Nothing's going to happen to you. And so if it takes you 19 times where you think that, that's just stupid, that sign, I don't have to stop, and I've ran it 20 times and nothing happened to me. Like some point, okay, there is law enforcement. The 20th time I ran it, I got a ticket and it was expensive, and then I'm never going to do it again. Or even something like wearing a seatbelt or a health consequence. Various that people make decisions that have negative consequences, but the effect is unclear right away. So just like flat Earth, that your average person could probably believe the Earth is flat without a negative consequence their whole life.
Sure, but whether they believe it's flat or whether I believe it's a globe, I think that the Earth has a shape that's independent of any belief that I may hold on it. And I have what I call knowledge, which I sort of define as justified true belief, because I sincerely think it's true. But if I'm wrong and the Earth is flat, then I don't have that knowledge. I just think I do, which sort of is the nature of knowledge claims. They're only true if they are in fact correct. And I think the actuality of the shape of the Earth is independent from any belief that anybody has on it.
Yeah, I mean, religion would presumably have more consequence. Science in general has substantial consequences. Like evolution, it could have consequence to medicine, but I mean, we might disagree about evolution, but in practicality, there's no practical implications to our day-to-day life that this disagreement makes a difference. And even like Christianity, if you say, like, unfortunately, it's false, you're following a false religion if you're Christian. And not only that, like if you take Adam Green, you're being duped so to say, by the Jews. You're benefiting the Jews, and Jews are benefiting from your practice of false religion, and saying just that's his calculation, his theory. Versus if you're saying like, no, Christianity is true, and there is a God who rewards us in this world and in the next. And a person, like Adam was arguing last night with Christians, and he said because it works, because we have a group of people and their lives are improving. And he argued, well, anybody's life could improve. You get people off drugs and help them improve their life, through any form of good advice. So just because you have a Christian group and people are part of the Christian groups and their life is improving is not really a proof of Christianity, but it could enforce the perspective like, look, I'm going to church and my life is getting on track and good things are happening to me. So from my perspective, that's proof that it's true.
From your perspective, that's proof that it's true.
Because it's working.
So if it works for one person and doesn't work for another person, does that make it true for one and false for the other?
Yeah, and so for the greater perspective, what's objectively true, and then how people make decisions for themselves. So okay, like I'm going to stick to being a Jew because it's working for me, even if you could logically demonstrate to me that the books and the prophet and our historical accounts are probably inaccurate, to say like as a group strategy and as a lifestyle, it still works for me, so I'm still going to do it. And so so if the person's a Christian and you demonstrate that like it's probably not true, Jesus probably didn't even exist, or certainly what it says in these books is contradictory to what we know about logic and science, and the person well maybe you're right, but it works for me, so I'm going to keep doing it. Versus a question that maybe doesn't work for you, and it becomes pretty complicated how you define true, and then because we're humans and we have to act, just like I said, there's a law. So our parents in the school and the driving teacher might have told us that you can't run a red light, but when or a stop sign. But when I first got my driver's license, I looked and there was nobody around, and I didn't want to waste the time, so I just ran the stop signs until eventually I got a ticket and a few tickets, and I stopped doing it. But so that reality of knowing about the police to saying that like I've done it and got away with it, even though I know about the police, to eventually getting caught, to making some sort of calculation, to some sort of objective. Like I know that 19 out of 20 times I could probably run a stop sign and get away with it. No one's going to see. I'm never going to get a ticket, but I don't do it anyways because I've accepted this larger thing of the law as true. And even though I recognize that 19 out of 20 times I could run the stop sign, I still don't do it.
Yeah, so we might be using different words to mean true and false. And just to fill you in, I sort of come from a computer and programming background. So my ideas of true and false are very Boolean, either 0 or 1 kind of thing. So I kind of say, like, truth is that which comports with reality. It isn't based upon any kind of belief or internal visualization.
Except the laws of logic, right?
Sorry?
Except the laws of logic, right?
Well, yeah. I was just about to say, absolutely, Jen, you're right. I have to presuppose some conditions in order to make any kind of coherent...
You don't have to presuppose those, that's for sure. I don't think Doooovid presupposes those.
Well, the problem is, like, without the law of non-contradiction, say, that we were talking about earlier, when I say the door is open...
Mark, I'm aware of the problem. I'm like the greatest master at all this stuff, so that should just already be taken on board. But I understand the truth explosion problem. I get it all. Do you get what I'm saying about the laws of logic not actually being laws of logic, just random Roman propaganda, basically?
I have to presuppose my senses are true for a given level of accuracy, of course, because we know they're not completely infallible. But
which is where the problem for our debate comes in, that our senses say that the Earth is flat.
Well, no.
Yes,
like I said...
If you look around, it's flat.
Well,
Don't say you can tell the Earth is a globe just by looking around, Mark. It looks flat.
No, so what I said was that our senses are true for a given level of accuracy. So even though a mirage like you see in the desert, and I'm in Australia, so I see lots of mirages on the road and stuff, you could swear that it's water, but it's not water. So I have to acknowledge that my senses are fallible. And when I look around and see that, hey, it looks flat, that there are better things to trust than what I just see because of the nature of the senses.
And then it's a question of what do we trust in, and that's where the issues start. So I'm hoping we can talk about that for our debate. I don't know if we're on that part of the chat yet, but I just wanted to maybe make it a little bit better than the average dumpster fire flat Earth debate.
Zoubida from London, I guess a regular at Speaker's Corner, Islamic activist, and she's got a pretty big channel, bigger than ours. She seems to get like 50 to 100 viewers. I was on her channel many times, and do you do debates, Zoubida? Are you familiar with modern day debate or any of these platforms? Have you been on a formal debate channel?
Well, first of all, thank you for letting me onto the show, Doovid. Hello, Mark and Jen. I have been on other platforms, had a few debates on there, been on Joseph's platform and many other platforms, but I thought I'd come here and just listen to the discussion and maybe contribute my opinions.
Yeah, I mean, so Mark and Jen are both intellectual streamers. They happen to be arguing, for whatever reason, this modern day debate channel, one of the bigger debate channels on YouTube, has these recurrent flat Earth debates, and I guess there's a small contingency of people who believe the Earth is flat, arguing against it. I was just on Adam Green, No More News, talking about the historical Jesus. So we're more kind of talking about how do you know the truth, how do you express the truth, and obviously Mark and Jen are going to be. They debated evolution, so they disagree about many different things. They agree about other things, but they're going to be debate partners Saturday night about flat earthers. And it's something that you'll probably, like, of course the world is spherical, but if you actually had to put it into proving it to somebody, like if you're a mother of a child or something, and you're just thinking you're going to try to explain to your kid something, and you have to start with the basics, versus someone that for whatever reason is educated and grown up and has ulterior school, let alone like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, that represents countless people, versus, so to say, a conspiracy that most people would believe is untrue, like flat Earth. Like, how do you even go about trying to convince them or the audience?
It just depends how you want to, go about it. But I got some really exciting ideas. And hi, Zoubida, nice to meet you.
Hi, Jen, nice to meet you too. I mean, in the sense of flat Earth, it's not like a major thing for me, but I did sort of have this discussion once on my channel, and obviously most of the time I like to speak from the Islamic perspective, and the Quran has some very interesting things to say about the earth. So there are like verses which suggest, or they speak metaphorically about the shape of the earth. So Allah basically says that the earth is almost rolled out like a carpet, which suggests that a carpet isn't in a cylinder position. A carpet's pretty flat, right? So there are some verses in the Quran.
It's rolled up, I suppose it could be a cylinder.
Well, I guess. I mean,
the Quran could also be a circle if it's rolled up twice, or a disc, I suppose.
Well, I mean, when you look at carpets, specifically like I don't know, Arabian carpets, they're because again, there's a lot of metaphors in there in the Arabic style, metaphors that won't really be metaphors in the English language, but more
the 4 corners,
in the Arabic
right?
language.
The 4 corners is a metaphor for causality of the 3 + 1 dimensions. This is why what I was saying to Doovid before, where people get them on these debates and start quoting the Talmud, just random citations of God knows what, that no matter how bad it may sound, it doesn't really go that far because there's all this missing context.
Well, Jennifer has a background in physics, actually, and even I guess her leanings would be more what you call Hindu. I think. I mean, Mark, you come from a Christian background, but have more atheist, agnostic leanings.
No, I'm not. Like, I don't have a Christian background at all. I was raised in a secular household.
Okay. I mean, if you focus on axioms and like from St. Augustine or some of the rabbis or Islamicists or even Hindus, the scripture is the axiom, and if what we see contradicts the scripture, we shouldn't believe our eyes. And it's like Maimonides takes a more rationalistic perspective, and if science and observation doesn't match scripture, we shouldn't reject scripture, but we should reinterpret scripture to correspond with what you see in the eyes. Like Jennifer saying that, like, if the scripture and the sages talk about the four corners of the earth, maybe they don't mean that the earth is flat. Maybe they mean that we're talking about 3 + 1 dimensions or some sort of allegorical interpretation versus possibly in ancient times or till today, that someone would say, well, the scripture says it. I trust the scripture more than logic, math, or science, or what I see with my eyes. And in order to distance a person from sin, you're better off going with scripture, even if it goes against what we see with our eyes. And there could be schools within that of Judaism, Hinduism, or Islam that all have this understanding of does scripture outweigh empirical evidence in science, or can you, so to say, reinterpret that? Even, let's say, the sages of a previous generation interpreted the scripture to mean something, but now science appears to be pointing in a different direction, like evolution, that now we accept, the majority of Jews, Christians, maybe some Muslims, Hindus accept evolution and have reinterpreted scripture in terms of an evolutionary understanding.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring a verse from the Quran, which describes like how Earth is made. And Allah says, "He who made for you the earth a bed spread out, and the sky a ceiling, and sent down forth from the sky rain, and brought forth thereby fruits as provisions for you." So again, it's these sort of metaphorical phrases which sort of do slightly suggest that the earth is not round in the way that we see it. But again, this is just, again, maybe metaphor. So what the case that I'm making is that if I did have an opinion on flat earth, it would be obviously what the Quran says. And from my own interpretation, there are many verses in the Quran to suggest that the earth is more flat than it is round, just based on things like the earth being spread out like a bed. As we know, a bed is very straight.
Yeah,
I mean,
as far as I know,
are you a
the
flat earther then?
Christians had a flat Earth model, I think, as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a flat
historically,
earther.
most Christians and Jews were probably flat earthers. Saying at some point, even historically, that flat Earth matched large amounts of perception, that it took larger discoveries of modern science to conclusively prove or even indicate, and that in ancient times it could have even been more likely for people looking at the existing evidence to think that the earth was flat or over a globe. And then the question, what role does evidence play? At what point do you say, well, the evidence is overwhelming, that even though the scripture indicates this understanding that the evidence is just overwhelming, and therefore you have to you either reinterpret the scripture, or God forbid, you say, well, maybe I'm part of a false religion, that I believed the prophecy, but like modern day atheisms or complaint against religion, that like you can't really believe that this is prophecy. If it was prophecy, how come there's so many blatantly inaccurate descriptions of what today is known to be scientifically true? Which I
Satan
guess
was testing us, obviously.
Well, I mean, Mark and Amy, I think regularly stream on these type type issues and examine mostly Christian or Hebrew scripture. I'm not sure if you examine the Quran with that, but I mean, you're looking the skeptics approach, and if you took all of the examples in any given scripture and then compared it to what the evidence of modern science shows today, what do you do with that as a religious person?
Well, I think metaphor is fine. You can accept the overwhelming evidence and that your holy book or your scripture was speaking metaphorically or poetically, or sort of any of these stuff. And a lot of religious people do. There are Christians who just say, hey, that was. And interestingly enough, flat Earth was never a huge movement within Christianity. Which is interesting. The heliocentric model was definitely not. It was a geocentric model, that the sun went round the Earth. But flat Earth wasn't a huge thing, even in Christianity, because we knew that it was, or people had demonstrated that the Earth was round in ancient Greek days, using pillars stuck into holes to show the angle of the sun. Sun casting the shadow was greater than that of a flat plane. So people had known about this for quite some time. And while the heliocentric model was massively controversial, the globe model was not.
Yeah, and even with scripture today, that there's there's indications that that might be a flat Earth, but it's not clearly stated that in especially a way that would be required for a person to believe, as where there's many more verses that are indicative of a heliocentric model. And even the Lubavitch Rebbe, who had an advanced degree in mathematics and worked for the Army, for the Navy as an electrical engineer, largely stuck with the heliocentric model, and even claimed that according to Einstein's theory of relativity, that it's conceivable, at least if not not saying it's probable, but at least according to modern physics, it's conceivable that the Earth is the center of the universe. In accordance with the scripture, that there's many more indications in scripture in the sages that the Earth has to be the center of the universe, and then to flip the majority of evidence and say, well, if you asked an expert in physics, and you say, according to our understanding of physics, modern, is it possible that the Earth is the center of the universe? And I think that most physicists would agree that it's at least possible that the Earth, you could have a model where the Earth is in the center, and if you held the Earth still and everything else was moving, even though the evidence is extremely unlikely, that it's at least possible.
Well, sure, but you could do that for any point in the universe.
That was the Lubavitch Rebbe's point,
Yeah,
and just saying that because there's so much historical stuff in the scripture and statements of the sages indicating the Earth being at the center of the universe, that was actually theologically important, as where flat Earth is not theologically important.
But can I just say something on that matter? I think a lot of flat earthers are sort of labeled as conspiracy theorists, and this is just my observation. I think the main foundations of their argument is sort of questioning what is being taught as the norm. And I think they're questioning, scientists and, whether they're, because obviously there was a big dispute about the map of the Earth, and that this sort of map that we've got of the Earth is not technically accurate. And the way that it's positioned, and certain countries are supposed to look much bigger, but on the map they're looking much smaller. So I think a lot of their foundations is actually based on questioning NASA, questioning mainstream narratives, questioning scientists, questioning even reality to a certain extent, because what would the aim, what is the benefit of saying the Earth is flat? Okay, if we were to accept the Earth is flat, there must be a reason that these flat earthers are so determined to prove this point. It must, must have a deeper meaning to it, because obviously, again, from a spiritual Islamic perspective, everything that God describes the earth in or the afterlife in is pretty much in layers, or different dimensions. So, for instance, we've got 7 heavens, we've got 7 hells. Again, these are sort of layers of different types of dimensions. And it's the same as the Egyptians as well, with the pyramids and the pyramid scheme. Everything is done in different layers. So I think what I'd like to explore is the intentions or the deeper meaning behind proving the Earth is flat.
You
Well, I
can't
think.
prove
Well,
the
I
Earth
think.
is flat because it's not. So you'd have
Well,
to assume something false to prove that it was true. Then your axioms of proof would be worthless, so your proof would be a non-starter, like the Kalam argument.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the greater problem here is what's the benefit of believing that science is a method for accurately predicting and assessing reality. If you're going to sort of say, hey, science isn't going to tell us that the Earth is round, or science isn't going to do this, then if we give up that reliance in science, then there's a lot of things that we can't do and we can't implement into our world. The scientific methodologies are what's responsible for you and I talking right now. And being sort of studying data transmission, I use the same methodologies that other scientists use in their evaluations. In fact, the units that I've done are scientific methodologies for part of the reason that they are relied upon for field testing, for troubleshooting, for implementing in data exchange systems, testing. There's just so much stuff that we use, not exactly the same, but the same methodologies for doing. And if you take that away and say, hey, it's no longer reliable and you can't rely on it, I don't know where our technological advancement goes from there, because it's 100% dependent on these methodologies.
You could separate, science from technology and engineering. So if a person has an alternative explanation and they're rejecting mainstream science due to an alternative explanation, like evolution, that I have an alternative explanation, and therefore, like I've looked at the evidence for evolution, but I have bias because I have an alternative explanation for the origin of humans that makes more sense to me or goes more in line with my belief system, to skepticism, that lack of trust in the system, that science is a tool of the elites. And even though I can't explain, according to an alternative explanation, how this technology would work, even though we might use it without science being true, that my distrust of the elites is so large that I'm also going to reject science, straight out. That if you time someone out, I guess that's okay, but don't ban anybody. I don't have anybody banned.
No,
at all.
it's just one of my long-term trolls.
Yeah, I mean, God forbid, I don't want to bring dispute here. Just we try to talk about issues. If a person is conspiratorial in the way that not necessarily that they have a legitimate explanation for how this technology works according to their own understanding, but just to say that they have a legitimate reason for believing that the elites and powers that be are corrupt, and you shouldn't trust what they're saying, and even something, if it's like politics or morals or religion that they're forcing on people, but even something that might appear to be objective like science, that the system is so untrustworthy that you should also reject the mainstream scientific establishment, even if you use the technology that appears to work because of the scientific establishment, and you have no alternative explanation.
I mean, I just wanted to respond to Mark about science. I don't reject science, but I think the evolution of science has reached a point where it's having negative effects on human beings. So even things like, this technology that we're using, I think human dependency on technology takes away from the natural faculties that humans have, and they become dependent on technology rather than using their own attributes, using their own intelligence. And I think it is slightly dumbing people down as far as I'm concerned, because it's been used as a form of escapism. It's been the reason for high rates of depression and even suicides to a certain extent. And so this is my main problem. Even when you look at the medical field, to treat mental health, they've made all
Are you
these pills.
conspiratorial about it, that you think that they're purposely lying
No, I don't
about
think they're
this
purposely doing it.
information due to some alternative motives?
No, I don't think that the evolvement of technology has some sort of sinister intentions behind it. But I think the effects of this modern technology is having a negative effect on human beings, and I think this is why, YouTube has gone as far as trying to sort of censor, sort of bullying or any bad behavior. They've even got rid of the dislike button because, again, it's causing human beings to feel humiliated and embarrassed, according to their article. So my main point is like, I'm not against science, but I feel like it has reached a point where human beings are overly dependent on science and on technology, which causes societal problems. Even individually, people are becoming more depressed and can't really function outside of social media. Really, it's causing a lot of cognitive dissonance in the way that certain human beings behave.
So
Well, I
I like
think
a
that-
conspiratorial, if you say like, oh, maybe the election, you can't believe anything these people tell you, even science.
Well, I think
didn't
that
say that,
science doesn't make any pronouncements of morality at all. It doesn't say how it's supposed to be used, and this is a vulnerability of science, and it does have some problems. But this problem is that we can't use science to tell us how to use the fruits of that methodology. Other moral systems have to exist to tell us what we use this for and how we use it. I just think of, like, sort of before the advent of technology, how many people had really miserable lives, sort of dying in childbirth and of gangrene and breaking a leg, and they're basically sentenced to death. Science has given us, and I'm not sort of saying science is perfect, it does have weaknesses. I've pointed out it's got no moral imperative whatsoever. It's made our lives significantly better, but we aren't well versed with how life used to be like before we had these things. When raiders used to roam the land and Attila the Hun was sweeping across the plains, making people's lives absolute misery. I agree that there are some problems with modern living and the sort of these postmodern implementations of technology that have disconnected us. But there are other stuff which connect us. I mean, today I'm sitting literally across the world having a really good conversation with people. And I think that we sort of sometimes get overwhelmed with some of the negatives that we see, that we forget all the positives that science has sort of provided to us. But I do see that science has to be moderated with ethical and moral imperatives to how it's used. You can reel off a list of the Nagasaki and Hiroshima and Chernobyl and all of these things, which is science gone awry, but it's not used to make these moral designations. We have to do that independently.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I just wanted to answer the person in the comments asking, what do I think of realism? I just had a quick Google search. I've never heard of it, and it's some UFO religion I don't really know about. So I don't really have no opinions. If you asking what I think of UFOs, I mean, I don't know.
Honestly, I think it's more probable than a deity, to be honest with you. I think that the chance that there is some sort of life is pretty probable. So,
I mentioned in my historical Jesus, the factor of
right.
the possibilities that Jesus was a rabbi, was, like a prophet was some sort of avatar divinity figure from a known religion or some unknown force or possibly an alien. Until today, there'll be people that say, well, maybe Jesus, either Muhammad or any of these larger than life characters that changed the course of history were some sort of alien. And from an empirical point of view, how do you know the truth? There's always going to be these possibilities, like maybe this great human figure that changed the course of history was actually an alien.
Right, but I think there's going to be one thing behind it all that will be the truth, even if we don't know what that truth is, and we can only assign probability based upon the best information we have. I think there will be another level which says one of these will be true, regardless of what anybody believes about the sequence of events.
But I said people have a personal experience with religion, and say you have a God we pray to, or we follow the ritual and believe that reciprocates. So if it was an alien who did these wondrous acts, then does this alien continually reciprocate with us, as opposed to saying no, I mean the creator of everything is more likely to be the entity that reciprocates with us in the way that we understand our religions to reciprocate.
But do you think that there will be a actuality which is going to be the reality, which is objective and not subjective to any kind of probability or people's belief about it?
We're saying a God that answers prayer. Like so me and Zoubida, maybe Jennifer, believe in a God that answers prayer, and our experience corresponds with, like, yes, I experience a God that answers prayer. And if you say, well, I think it's more likely that there's a God that answers my prayer than some sort of alien that answers my prayer. And so if you're going to come and say, well, no, I mean, you just think your prayer is answered and you're mistaken, and whatever experience you have that makes you think your prayer is answered is some sort of delusion or false perception, or you're going to claim that yes, there is some sort of answer to my prayer, but it's this alien that's answering my prayer.
But can I just that thing? Sorry, I just want to say one thing about the alien. You said that you believe that an alien could be much more likely to be a deity than God, but it's like, and when we speak about God, we're speaking about the creator of the universe, the creator of everything. An alien is limited. He doesn't. When we think of alien, we think of most likely an extraterrestrial being, but we don't look at an alien as the creator of the universe, creator of human beings. We just look at it as a more superior being, with extra, abilities compared to human beings. And the thing is like, human beings have always throughout history believed in God. Like if you even look at the earliest civilizations tracing thousands of years ago, believing in a God has been inherently a part of human nature. The lack of belief in God has only come around in sort of the 20th or 21st century, or I'm not saying there wasn't atheists, thousands of years ago, but it became more of a phenomenon, widespread, during the Industrial Revolution, during science, becoming more advanced. So people have believed in God throughout humanity longer than they have not believed in a God. So I believe that it's inherently a human thing to believe in God.
Well, it's a human thing to believe in something. Gods didn't sort of make an appearance till a bit later on. It sort of started out as simple animism. People believed in spirits inhabiting things. I think that it's very human to fill explanations where we have none. We're very uncomfortable with not having an answer, and generally we will insert an answer. And I mean, I could go into the evolutionary reasons why that is, but I think I'll leave that one alone. This is a classic argument or appeal to popularity. All these people believed it, so it must be true, and that's not. It's sort of a logical fallacy, because it doesn't really matter how many people believe it. It's either going to be true or not. And this is where I have to point out the difference between epistemology and ontology. So epistemology is what you believe and why you believe it. Ontology is the actual reality of the situation, what's behind it. And I do, but I'm sorry, I'm not understanding, because when I say, do you think there's a reality that is going to match your belief or my belief or somebody else's belief? It doesn't sound like you really, you don't think that's important at all. It's just what people believe that's important. And I don't want to straw man you, I admit. So, you know, but
I would say empirically that I think those answers are beyond us. So say when we die, maybe we'll have answers to it, and if not, saying we'll have to live our lives without ever knowing the answers to these questions. From a scientific view, the problem of empiricism, like you said, science could only answer so much, and science will likely never be able to answer these questions. So like as a believer, I believe I'll die, my soul will leave my body, maybe I'll meet my maker, and I'll be revealed answers that were unavailable to me in my current form. And my understanding from the tradition of my sages, but also rationality, is that I think these answers are beyond human attainment, that not just me is never going to be able to answer these questions, but the sum totality of all human endeavor will also never be able to answer these questions.
Well, I mean, that's perfectly fine. I just believe that even though we can't answer the questions, the question will have an answer. Like, objectively, if there's a teacup in the Andromeda galaxy, humanity may never know the answer to that. It might be beyond our scope, beyond any scope of any organism or anything at all. But I think that there is an answer to that question, regardless of whether I know it. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go back to what, was it Zoubida? I haven't heard you for a while, Jen, but I can hear
I
you
think
now.
my audio might have disconnected, but I'm coming through now. Okay.
Okay,
if
yeah,
you were trying to
now.
say something we didn't hear, or you just thought maybe you were being quiet.
I wanted to say something about your approach, Doovid. Correct me if I'm wrong, but with your multiple truth hypothesis, it does appear you're going for some type of paraconsistency. It's not just a straight yes or no to these, or true or false to these, like abstract propositionals, the way I think Mark's trying to frame it.
Yeah, I don't think it's either or. I mean, it could be ultimately it's going to be either or, but you're related to the problem of empiricism. There's always going to be multiple explanations that are more or less probable, and the probabilities of those might change over time. And I'm sure, are you a physicalist or materialist? Do you only believe in the material realm?
Not necessarily, because a materialist has to believe that there can only be material things, and even physicists don't think that. A physicalist, believes that. Materialist, I don't assert that only material things exist. I don't assert that. However, I haven't seen any evidence of anything immaterial. So I am an empiricist. Technically, I'm not a materialist because I don't rule out the immaterial, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I mean, I would take, you're saying there's possibilities, and we could examine the logical conclusion. So say, okay, let's say that there's only a material realm, and consciousness and everything arises, and that nothing survives death, and the various possibilities, and you could have all these various schools. And then you could look at the available evidence, and it's not going to be conclusive. You might have something that's much more likely than the other. So the idea of my multiple truth hypothesis would be to try to keep in mind all of the viable possibilities, and then recognize that various theories explain different things better than others, so that certain things might be explained better than by one theory, and other things better explained by another theory, even though in reality they contradict. And you could say, even from flat Earth versus sphere, that you could probably give a whole list of information that would apparently be better described by a flat Earth, even though maybe all of that could be correctly described, why it just appears to be better explained by flat Earth, but in reality is perfectly explained also, or just as well or better by a sphere. And you could apply that to all cases of uncertainty. That would be theoretical if you're talking about materialism, physicalism, dualism, a spiritual world, the nature of the creator, to even a given tradition, to is there a creator? Does the creator exist and affect the material realm through some other dualistic, spiritual realm? And historically, did that creator interact, or through vehicles such as prophecy, and even compare, like Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Krishna, or the various understandings of interaction, or questions like, is prayer answered? And all of those are largely uncertain, and there would be evidence that any of these fields that people believe in, there's at least some form of evidence, and you have the explanatory power of that explanation. And then if you want to say, well, objectively, what is true? So my multiple truth hypothesis is trying to philosophically say that's not the proper way of looking at this. As humans, with our power, the problem of empiricism, the limitations of our knowledge, that we really have no ability to determine one truth. And so we should just accept that all cases are going to have multiple explanations that have better or worse explanatory power, and we could possibly even mathematize that, and like have exact probabilities. And like I said, for me and you as people, we could have a long list of what we agree about and what we disagree about. And then if we're going to function in society together, we could probably more coherently do that, knowing what we agree about and disagree about, when we should associate, when we should disassociate. And that would also work for scientific ideas. And the fact is that modern science and technology does work like that. There's multiple fields of science, mechanical engineering, thermodynamics, electrical engineering, where there's certain phenomena that we don't really understand how it works, and we have certain theories that explain certain explanations of the behavior, like say electrical or magnetic, but then other explanations that explain other phenomena like thermodynamic, even though they may contradict, and like obviously physics and like quantum physics and the various things, like there are clearly blatant contradictions in science, even though for some perspective they work.
I don't know about a blatant contradiction, Doovid. They're all using the same numerical system.
Well, understandings of certainly understandings of why phenomena occur, or even
can you cite
even
me a
how they
blatant contradiction? Because that is an extremely tall order.
Well, yeah, and just even to the nature of electromagnetism.
Okay, where's the contradiction there?
Yeah,
That we don't know how these phenomena operate.
That's not a contradiction. That's an admission of incomplete knowledge. It's like, okay, we've got the Maxwell equations, and we don't have.
So we have alternative explanations that work
That's
better.
That's not a contradiction.
It is contradiction because we have alternative explanations that we use for different fields, and then even like imaginary numbers that fiber optics, electricity, data compression relies on imaginary numbers. And even though imaginary numbers are imaginary, but we still use it for the technology. So I mean, Mark was just talking about the technology we're using. The technology we're using right now necessitates the use of imaginary numbers, even though we have no clue what imaginary numbers actually are.
It's necessitated by virtue of it being an eigenvalue of a rotation matrix.
Yeah, but we couldn't be doing what we're doing right now in terms of the signal being
that's because of eigenvalues, but that doesn't mean we
without
couldn't
imaginary
find better
numbers.
Eigenvalues. We're going to be able to find better eigenvalues. Quantum periodic table.
I mean, Mark,
yes,
you agree
still
about
work even if you're using shitty eigenvalues.
I mean, you just the example of imaginary numbers should be sufficient, that what we're doing right now
No.
wouldn't be possible without imaginary numbers.
No, computers don't use imaginary numbers.
Yes, they
Yeah,
do.
but I mean fiber optics and
theta equals
fiber
sine
optics
plus
and
I
data
cos
processing.
theta. That's a fundamental identity in signal processing, Mark.
Yeah, I mean
That's
data.
Yes, but-
absolutely fundamental identity to do with. It's not to do with I being quote real. It's to do with the symmetry of the signal.
Yeah, but that describes something.
It's the
A
square
signal.
root of -1. That's what it is. It's you say, okay, I have this a rotation matrix. I'm gonna find its eigenvectors, and one of the eigenvalues is equal to the square root of -1.
Mhm.
Okay, we might as well give that a shorthand. Let's make it a small I. I don't know because it wasn't me why they chose that one. I wasn't there.
You know, so that we couldn't be doing what we're doing right now without a solution to the square root of -1.
No, we don't need a solution. We just need a placeholder. We need to acknowledge it as having the same truth value as +1. But they're both not real in any absolute sense, which is where the problem comes in, which is just to rein this back into what it was originally supposed to be about. Here's the issue that I see with this debate. We've got materialism, empiricism, and empiricism has some context that your senses are reliable, but our senses indicate a flat Earth. And then only if you're going to, on top of that, posit a metaphysical thesis that only the material exists, how then do you justify that Earth is a sphere? There appears to be nothing. There is no way to walk from a proof. There's no way to go from an assumption to the conclusion that it's a sphere within your worldview, Mark.
My worldview.
I can easily derive why the Earth has the shape that it does, and even that, like, it's not even necessarily fully spherical to look at it as a sphere. It would be better to look at it as being verging on a hyperbolic figure eight, not complement, because that would model the ejaculations of volcanoes or whatever. That's not the right word, excuse me, but yeah.
So there's things that we can see that can demonstrate beyond any shadow of a doubt that the Earth is not flat, simply from what we see.
Empirical. It's all qualified.
Sure
You
it
always
is.
have to rely on, oh, well, the image. Okay, it's an image. Do you know how easy it is to use
No.
a computer to alter what an image looks like? Like I
Yeah,
used to work in
not
this
when we
field.
had the first images of the Earth back in the 60s.
How do you know that? You weren't there. I'm not saying I'm trying to steel man our position.
Yeah, no,
by
I gotcha.
giving arguments. So just so
For
you know.
instance, okay, so my best
I'm
example.
LARPing here, Mark.
Yeah, no, I realize that. So the best example that we've got is from looking into like Polaris from the northern hemisphere, and in the southern hemisphere you look towards the southern pole, like the constellation pole, and the stars will rotate in different directions. That cannot happen on a flat Earth, and that's what I've got the demonstration model to show you. We know that this is incredible evidence that the Earth is round.
Say that again.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
okay,
sorry,
so-
my computer froze for a second there, but you did lose me. You said we have some.
I mean, did you have
pictures of the
slides? Are
sky.
you going to save it
well, I've
for
got this
Saturday?
demonstration
You wanna show it
ball.
now? Do you want to show it now, or are you saving it for a surprise Saturday?
North, right? And
If you want to do a
south.
screen share, I'll add a. Okay, you have a ball.
Ready? There's South Pole, North Pole, right? And you've got arrows showing the spin of the Earth. And this shows why that if you look towards, say, the north, right, and you spin the ball in the direction the arrows show,
You've
the
presupposed
direction
your own
it's going.
conclusion. You've presupposed that it's a sphere.
So
I want you to
when you,
derive for me why it should be a sphere.
when you look towards the south
You hold
and
it
the
a tad
ball
bit higher, Mark.
spins
You hold
with
it
the
a tad,
arrows.
like a few inches higher.
goes in the opposite direction. How can that happen on? How can that happen on a? Well, how can it happen on a flat plane?
The idea, Mark, is not to address it on that level. The idea is to address the issue with reasoning and saying, well, empiricism is all right. if empiricism is all right, how do we go from it looks like it's flat to it's
Mhm.
actually a sphere? Where's the leap in reasoning that goes from it's okay to trust your senses to actually we are way too small
Yeah, so it's the
to know
weight
what
of
type of surface
evidence.
what we're sitting on, right? So it's not about weights of evidence, it's not about anything.
Yeah,
You're the one
sure it
positing
is.
empiricism. You're saying only that which
Mhm.
is observable is reliable.
Yes, yes.
So how does
I
an
don't.
observation work? Any type of picture, that's not an observation, that's an interpreted, formatted, compressed,
Well, I don't have
derivative
any
piece
other
of
way
nothing.
to evaluate reality except
So
for my
you can
senses.
see that's absolutely not true. That's
That is
I don't know where you
100% true.
how could you possibly so you're basically affirming this comical version of solipsism. So where does science come into that?
Well, I mean, I don't. Solipsism isn't the topic of the debate. I mean, I can have that debate, and I can explain my position on solipsism. But at some point, you have to. I mean, why are you even talking if our senses aren't real? By simply
I don't know
listening
whether
to
they're real.
me
There's
and basically me listening to you, you're validating my presupposition of my senses. Because if I couldn't
how?
presuppose my senses, then why would I be listening to you at all? Why would I trust that what you're saying is what you're saying?
Well, there can be a partial transmission of a signal without it being perfect. I can
And
get
you're
some
listening to
information
me,
across to
which
you.
means that you are validating that your senses are in some way reality. And I don't have a problem with that presupposition. We do it all the time, simply in interacting with the world. But in listening to me, you're using your senses, which means that you're validating them in some way.
And our senses say that
if
the
you
Earth is
don't
flat.
if you don't want to accept the presupposition that our senses are reality,
No, I
then
don't want to accept that. That's insane.
Well, since Zoubida left,
sure.
I wanted to have her on for networking purpose, just because I stream and like to network, and so if you want to talk debate strategy, presumably you're probably going to have two intros where both you and Jennifer will give your own intro. It'd be divided. I don't know if it's 5 or 10 minutes, and then the opposition. I don't know if your strategy, then you're speaking. So you could try to establish shared axioms with your opponents, or you could just lay out your straight to the audience where you're not talking past each other, but so to say you're speaking to the audience and you're trying to establish audience axioms that you believe the audience will accept, and then going to demonstrate your understanding of why the globe is spherical from the axioms that you lay out. And then when you're actually in the debate, if you're going to be able to establish shared axioms with the opponents, or it could be that it'll be impossible to establish shared axioms, and then you'll have to find some sort of rhetorical strategy to how to talk or dialogue with your opponent even without establishing shared axioms, which could be talking directly to the audience about your opponent instead of talking to your opponent. But I mean, presumably you will be able to find some sort of shared axioms with your opponents. So I mean, what's your strategy?
When has
Mark?
that ever worked out?
Well, I mean, I'd say I find shared axioms with basically everyone I speak to. I never meet someone that
I'd actually agree with David. Yeah.
That I don't have some shared axioms.
So not axioms you can reason a priori truths from, just random shit that gets said that sounds nice. I got you, sure.
No, I'm saying axioms that I could agree with the person I'm speaking with. That we don't usually go through proving or establishing our axioms, just the saying that we share these axioms, and therefore we could have a conversation based on...
Maybe not axioms, maybe beliefs or opinions, maybe something a little less fundamental than an axiom.
Well, I'm saying that our conversation will be axiomatic because we both share, if you want to call them beliefs, shared beliefs, if you want to get semantic about it, but you're saying like if we have a few
it's
shared...
important not to dilute the meaning of metaphysical absolutes, like a word like axiom. You can't just start saying, well, everything's an axiom now. It's like, no.
No,
but
you're playing word games that are largely meaningless because words mean different things to different people, And if I just mean beliefs by axioms or whatever I mean by it, and then you're going to come in and say, no, I know the true definition of axiom, and even though you think you know what that word means, you don't know what it means. And so that just leads to an unfriendly conversation.
Well, I agree with David that the definitions definitions don't make things so, and people can use different definitions, and then I suppose it's useful to go back and find out where your definitions differ and see if we can find common ground for what you're talking about and what Doovid is talking about.
It's unnecessarily
my
argumentative
point
to
is,
claim that the
yeah.
person is falsely defining their own terms. So you just accept this is their term, this is how they understand their term, and it's like just unnecessarily combative to accuse people of falsely using terms.
I don't think
jump style.
Yeah, I don't think definitions have true false values. There are normative definitions, though. There's ones that are used by a majority of people. That doesn't make them more right than another. They're just normative. And so,
if you're defining right as normative, then it would be. But if you're defining right as something else, yeah. So
yeah, no, I don't.
That's the point I
always
kind of bring up.
Right and wrong to definitions. They're just definitions. You can define anything as anything. I can define myself as a zebra, or I can define my coffee cup as God. Definitions
not coherently, unfortunately. And I was saying,
the more
productive you want your discussion to be, there does have to be a shared meaning behind the words. So I grant fully that not everyone's using the same definitions to words, and that there has to be an accounting for that. If you want to have a meaningful exchange, you do have to make sure you're referring to the same thing when you speak.
Well, yeah, I think it's useful. I think it's very useful, but I don't think
useful for what? Useful
for understanding.
Is unfalsifiable. For people who are so scientific, you're not very good at telling what theorems are unfalsifiable. Utilitarianism is unfalsifiable. That means that by the same rationale used against my theories, it should be dismissed because it's unfalsifiable.
Well, you just need a coherent strategy. And obviously, you and Jennifer are ideologically differ, but for this, you're better, largely putting up a united front, or to say that you could say clearly say that you and Jennifer agree to disagree about a whole host of issues, but you share beliefs or axioms or however you're going to use these words enough that you have a united front for the debate on flat Earth.
Yeah, so maybe we should start with what we agree on and why we agree on it. So, I've pretty clearly put across my foundation for arguing that the Earth is a globe. So maybe we should go into the foundation that you're using, Jen.
I still have no clue how you're going from empiricism, and you showed a globe, but that to me is presupposing the conclusion of a globe. So you can't do that. You got to do it from first principles, aka a priori from axioms, which is what my whole point was. But yeah, my axiom would be easy. It would be everything's a geodesic and a sphere's a geodesic shape, and I'd cite a bunch of examples, i.e. bubble, and what have you. Yeah.
Yeah, but the bubble's got nothing to do with the globe.
Well, it has everything to do with it in the sense that it lives in the same universe. It exists in the same space-temporal array. All the factors line up, so it's the I'm basically going to try to shift the burden of proof and say, based on all the testimony I've ever heard from professionals, it's a globe, as well as my senses tell me rightly interpreted, because I'm not subscribed to something that makes it hard for me to think clearly. I know how to analogize cosmically, and that's through geodesics, i.e.
You guys should probably try to avoid during the debate arguing with each other. So even if
that's why we're trying to do right now. We're trying to figure out, because for me you cannot defeat flat Earth because of what I said. You have some hard time going as a justification from materialist empiricist, which appears to be flat when you look around, to how do you get to a globe?
Yeah, I'm saying you don't want to spend the debate arguing against Mark's arguments.
I know.
I don't plan on
doing that. I don't plan on that at all. I'm trying to get Mark to see what the flaw in the position he's taking is. How do you make that jump in argumentation? How do you go from it looks flat empirically to it must be a sphere?
Well, I mean, even if
Because
Mark is incorrect, he could forward. You could still be his debate partner, and he could forward arguments that you feel are incorrect.
Of course. I just want to know what he's going to say. Because to me, that's like, is that an argument? What you did with that? Like, what? I don't actually follow what you even did with the sphere that you showed before.
Okay.
You're saying it lines up with what you observe when you look at a compass?
yeah, so when you're in the northern hemisphere, the stars rotate anti-clockwise, right? If you're looking up at the Polaris, which is the North Star, they rotate anti-clockwise. And when you're in the southern hemisphere, if you look at I forgot the name of the star, but the center of the rotation, it rotates clockwise. Now on a flat Earth, right? Flat Earth, in the North Pole, it's going to go the same way whether you put it in the North Pole or the South Pole, right? It's going the same way. It's a matter of perspective. You can't do that unless you switch the perspective 180 degrees, which is what happens if you're on a globe. It doesn't work. It just doesn't.
That's not bad. Do you want to share my screen? So one of the better arguments I've heard was, this is a proof of flat Earth. Why? Because the sky looks like a disk, and therefore, by the, transference correspondence or whatever type of principle you want to label it as, it's disk-like, therefore we're on a disk. So I did attempt to, make an argument as to why. I'm saying, like, well, that's,
Yeah, but
would
why
you feel
does that?
comfortable explaining why this happens, and do you understand, like, can you at least grant them that can you see why they're thinking it might be flat based on this?
Yeah, I mean, stuff looks like other things, but we know, like a mirage, just because something looks like water doesn't necessarily mean it's water.
So doesn't that defeat empiricism, though?
No.
Yes, it
Well, I don't know
does.
if it's a mirage. Like,
Because-
it's not like the example of water. You're talking about a perspective that
Sure.
it does factually look flat from certain perspectives, but you're saying that a larger perspective or enough perspectives, you'll see it's global. I mean, I don't see if you're saying your eyes are deceiving you, but when you look at around you and you see things are flat, it's not like a mirage that your eyes are deceiving you. It's just that you only see a small portion of the picture. In the larger picture, the evidence will clearly show that it's spherical, not flat, even though from a smaller picture, the evidence
Right.
might point toward it being flat.
Because when you put something close to a very large sphere, it looks flat from that perspective. But if you take it from a larger perspective, as Doooovid was saying, it has to be a globe. It has to be. Also, the model that they've presented, and I guess the second point that I'm going to make is that just because you present a vague model, one with very little information behind it, doesn't mean it's not a model. You still have to provide the data that shows that your model is correct, and they provide none. They just want to argue that it's not a globe, but they don't actually present any real justification besides it looks like this, and we know looks can be deceiving. The third thing I want to present is that on their model, you've got the sun, and its incandescence can burn your skin during the daytime, but for some reason you can't see it during the nighttime. If it's going around your flat Earth, so you've got your flat Earth here, if it's going around, you still should be able to see it. If it's that bright that it burns your skin.
You gotta hold it up a little higher. It's not showing in your screen.
If it's bright enough to burn your skin from, say, over here, then when it moves over there, you still should be able to see it. That brightness, there must be something obstructing. And what is that? What's obstructing the light? Because we know how far light can travel. We know the attenuation rates of light. Why would it suddenly vanish?
Yeah, I mean, the Greeks used the simple fact that things vanish over the horizon, and even the moon. They understand the phenomenon of the appearance of the moon that makes sense with a spherical Earth, that it rises and disappears, and then even if you're just looking at an object like the Greeks had seen a ship in the Mediterranean, that it slowly disappears, and you could understand that as, I think it's called, is it the event horizon, or what the point that if you drew out on a sphere, that if you're looking from here at a certain distance, that you're not going to be able to see the object once it gets past that distance on the sphere. And this was, the ancient Greeks that proposed that the world was round did it on
I want to
these
say
basic
vanishing
phenomena.
point.
Yeah, vanishing point. But
Yes,
it's an event
they might have
horizon's
an
from a black
alternative.
hole. It's
Yeah, there might
just
be an
the horizon.
alternative flat Earth explanation of a vanishing point. But vanishing
Yeah,
point.
it's something to do with density, but I can never follow the train. of
No,
thought.
that's their explanation for gravity.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
I
Did you
thought
hear,
it was-
Mark? We were discussing a few weeks ago on Week in Review the moon illusion, where when the moon is on the horizon, it appears larger than it actually is. And I guess in ancient times, that factually the moon, when it's high in the sky versus on the horizon, is the exact same size, but it's one of the horizon. It appears much bigger than it is. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that optical illusion.
I think so. I think that's to do with the light through the atmosphere, isn't it?
It's disputed till today. So the optical illusion was known in ancient times, and in ancient times they also thought that it was an illusion. For example, if you hold like a coin up to it, you could see that it's the same size. So it just appears to be bigger, but if you tried to like block it out with some sort of measurement device, you would see that it's the same size. And there's a whole bunch of explanations for why it is, although all of them have holes.
perspectival.
All of them have
Distance
you
to the next
so to say
closest
holes.
perspective.
Most people think it's a human perception thing. There's nothing within physics. It's not a phenomenon in the outside world. It's something internally in the mind that causes the perception, not in the external world. But
Right.
but for the understanding of the global world, like just seeing the sun set, in that you see the sun, then the sun goes away, and then you have the period of dusk or dawn, where the light from the sun is still there, even though the sun isn't there, and then eventually there's no more light from the sun, and that's clearly understood from in ancient times, from the fact that the Earth is spherical. So after it's over, the sun is past the vanishing point, that the light from the sun might still appear in the sky for a good 20, 30, 40 minutes, and then at a certain point, the sun past the vanishing point, that the light from the sun will also be past the vanishing point.
There's another mystery as to why the sunsets last longer in the northern hemisphere. I've got the answer to that, by the way. And yeah, I was thinking for the perspective, it was like a conservation of mind effect. So it would be like a conservation of perspective. You're essentially sampling, and there's the distance between the horizon and the moon, as well as the relative sizes of each. And when you're looking at the moon straight up in the sky, you can't see anything but the moon. So there's no counter perspective. So you're sampling everything in the sky plus the moon, which is way more than just the moon plus the horizon plus a little chunk of the sky, right? Like basically the steradians that you're perceiving is way bigger, and you have an approximate conservation of mind, which gives an approximate conservation of perceptual capacity, which is like basically the area swept out by your perception has a certain constancy, in the sense that, it's whatever leads to it seeming smaller, right? Because it's got to explain the effect. I don't exactly know how to put the rest of it together. It's the first time I really thought about it. I want to bring it to the why the sunsets last longer in the northern hemisphere. And it's because the southern hemisphere is the top of the planet. So the heavier stuff saturates in the bottom, and yay. And it's the top because gravity. So there you go.
I don't think there's a top to the southern hemisphere and northern. I think that up and down are towards the center of the earth and away from the center of the earth, not north.
Well, that's
and
not
south.
very 3 + 1 of you, is it?
Well, no. I don't know what that means.
It means there's more than one gravitational torsion on the planet, or field, or what have you. What are you trying to do there, Doovid? What's your diagram? I'm a little lost. It's
Well, I'm saying this circle up top is us, and here's the sun. So it's setting, and at some point, you could still see the sun, and then at some point, the sun disappears. So it's the vanishing point where you could no longer see the sun, but you still have dusk or dawn at this point here, where you could see the light of the sun. So at this point here, the sun is no longer visible, but the light is still visible, and like even at this point here, that you'll be able to see the light from the sun in the sky, even though the sun has long went away. And then at this point, the light from the sun is no longer visible in the sky anymore. So just the understood phenomenon of what happens every morning and every night, that the sun starts out and it disappears. You could see the sun going away, and then you could see the light of the sun still in the sky, and it gets darker and darker until the point where the light from the sun is no longer in the sky anymore. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen that or thought about it. I've seen better diagrams. I couldn't find one, so I just
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I don't think that's going to have much impact on flat earthers. I think they're going to be very skeptical of that. I don't.
It's an ancient argument. It's even in the Talmud.
Sure.
I mean, it comes from the Greeks, but in the Talmud, they discuss this, and they use this argument that's probably adapted from the Greeks.
I think that flat earthers, especially, I'm not sure about the Kai person. I don't know what their deal is, but Whitsitt is. He really just tries to make people angry and then, bring it all into just a debacle. I don't think that's going to be especially convincing to somebody like that. But I think more we should present. Was it a personal
attack, like authority can't be trusted and you can't be trusted, so I'm not going to listen to your logic. I'm going to attack you as a person to show you're not credible.
Yeah, sort of. You're unintelligent. You're stupid. That's absolutely. You don't understand the way that the world works, kind of thing. That kind of really nasty stuff. So I think maybe we should more present to the audience than them, because to be honest with you, I don't think Whitsitt believes that the earth is flat. I think he just does it for money. I don't think he thinks that. But I'm not taking this debate particularly seriously. It's not a topic that really has to be defended. There's no debate on flat earth out in the real world. It's just the discussion's kind of over, as far as I'm concerned anyway.
Like you mentioned, the geocentric. To say now that modern science the universe isn't heliocentric. Our solar system might be heliocentric, but certainly modern science doesn't think the universe is heliocentric. And that to say it's even to say statistically it's probably substantially more likely that the universe is heliocentric than geocentric. But the chance of the universe, the people would say that any given point could equally be possible as being the center, or to say that the likelihood of the sun being the center of the universe is probably approaching zero, but still much higher than the likelihood of the earth but technically any given point in the universe could be the center, and even from like an Einsteinian axiomatic system of what you're going to make stationary and how you're going to define your coordinate systems, that you could mathematically design a model of the universe that is geocentric, and then have the equations, so to say, work with the Earth as stationary, even though it's much simpler, like Occam's razor, to say like the Earth is moving and it's orbiting around the sun, even though in conceivability you could readjust the equations to have the
No,
Earth
it's simpler
stationary.
to model it as completely stationary, moving around in a disk, because that's exactly what it is. I mean, in the absolute relative sense, right? Obviously, I don't actually think the Earth is a disk, but if you think about it, the Earth goes around the sun in a sense, in a disk shape.
I don't think ease of modeling has any distinct impact on the truth.
Well,
I think
what is
that it'd
important?
be easier to model that nothing exists at all. That'd be really easy to model, but it's got no bearing on whether something
nothingness is
exists.
extremely advanced scientific method.
Well, I mean, from a global
inquiry.
perspective, we largely understand that the Earth is in rotation around the sun, and the sun is in rotation around the center of our galaxy, and our galaxy is in rotation around some other larger galaxy, which is in rotation around some other larger galaxy, and possibly even more than that. But at least the observational understanding that even the Incas, even the ancients, possibly like the precession of the equinox, could understood that the Earth is in rotation around the sun, and the sun is in rotation around our the center of the galaxy. That even the ancients recognized the precession of the equinox.
I didn't model the Earth as a sphere relative to the cosmos, is all I'm saying. And it wouldn't make any sense. But I don't think they're going to know about these old models of these stationary models.
It doesn't matter. You're not trying to convince them. You're trying to convince the audience.
Well, is it worth going into it, or people are just going to laugh at me and send James and be like, "You're defending flat Earth," because I don't think it's defending flat Earth. Sigma Dialectic asks, disputes of observations beyond the reported vanishing point at oceanic water level and tidal forces. I don't know what about these things that the references to. Sorry, it doesn't seem like a question to me.
Yeah, so I think they're pointing out that flat earthers generally bring this up of you can see the sun sort of its image beyond the purported vanishing point that we have, and it's to do with refraction of the light, sort of the way that light bends or scatters. Sorry. I'm going to really be relying on you for physics, Jen, because I'm not the best on physics, but I'll do my best.
Oh yeah, my completely uncontroversial physics opinions. That's the thing. Like,
sure.
I'm going to be relying mostly on these intuitive notions. I'm going to say, when you blow a bubble, what shape does it tend towards, and why does it tend towards that shape, and why should I believe the planet is anything other than that? Because basically make an argument for minimizing torque about the center of mass. Now, there's a bit of an issue. How do we explain why there's a stationary axis?
Yeah, but so you're giving an argument not based on observation necessarily. I mean, you could also give one, but you're giving on material science and
I'm using pramanas. I'm using what I think are going to be the most intuitive pramanas. I'm
Well,
not
if you're just using,
saying that, but
I don't know I'm thinking of the scientific terms of just the material science, where things, if they seek the lowest energy or whatever reason based on physics,
that's called the least action principle.
That they would
I've drawn it frequently.
They would tend towards certain shapes, because certain shapes limit energy, just like you're saying like a bubble. Why is a bubble a sphere? And you're saying because of the least action principle. So too whatever the Earth is on a larger scale, that it wouldn't the laws of entropy, that you couldn't have a floating disk in space. The laws of entropy would necessitate it to become spherical due to the least action principle. Even if we
Exactly,
couldn't,
like-
even if we had no way to observe it or understand it other than that, just to say the laws of material science necessitate the shape to be spherical.
I'd be saying, like, we can observe gravity effects on boats that are sufficiently large, which means that anything not a sphere, under the action of its own gravity, will start to reassemble to look like a sphere to equalize the gravitational field.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's hard. Like, I kind of almost pejorative about modern day debate that they keep on doing this, and you say just exercise in logic or something, and
It's, I mean, to me, it's fun because why not just do a thought experiment?
we're saying
It's not like
arguing
it's
for
gonna
the sake of
change anything.
arguing.
Well, gee, like that's never happened before.
Well, it's saying it's kind of I mean, you call it insult to or like low level, that say like, no, I don't want to argue just for the sake of arguing, and if it's like infotainment.
No, it's educational.
Or
not everybody's as smart as us three, are they? They get a treat to be able to have exposure to people. Like, maybe that's the wrong way to put it, but
no, I mean, I'm saying because then it's like, God forbid that like smart people are like retards that have to be boxed out in public like a circus display. That
well,
saying
the
like,
idea
no,
is to get past that.
they're not going to come and listen and learn
transcending
from
it,
you because you have something useful to say. They're going to wheel you out in front of the car, in front of the crowd, is like a circus display.
So
what else is new? You just described the last 2,500 years. Sorry, go ahead.
I enjoy the interlock of ideas, and I wouldn't say, I mean, arguments, it depends on how you're using that word. Again, we're back to definitions, but arguments can be logical presentations of positions, and I enjoy analyzing them, disassembling them, coming up with my own logical arguments to counter, and I don't think it need be adversarial, although admittedly flat earths do get into very adversarial territory. But I don't think it's arguing for arguing's sake. I enjoy the interlock of ideas, and I don't see why anybody should tell me that I should avoid that. I don't see why someone should dictate what I do if I enjoy it. So I enjoy doing that.
Well, so if you're
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I mean, if you're like if a hedonist, or are you going to put it in pejorative that
this is no less trivial.
You just do things for your
other
enjoyment.
Debate going on right
but
now.
Say like that it's okay. I don't do what I do for enjoyment. I do it out of sense of duty. So you say, okay, like if you enjoy it, and that's good enough for your explanation. You're doing it because you enjoy it, even if it doesn't serve a higher purpose. That if you say that enjoying it is not enough, it must serve some higher purpose, and enjoyment is not a legitimate higher purpose.
Well, I mean, it's not the only reason I do it. I also learn from doing debates. I learn how to interact with people. So I'm on the autism spectrum, so interacting with people is difficult for me. So sort of that practice of being able to interact, have a discussion, listen to people's ideas, present them with other ideas, I think that's useful. And I think it opens up a better dialogue with people that may be sitting on the fence. And I think that I'm right about the globe. I think that if you believe in flat Earth, then it doesn't comport with reality, and therefore you are thinking irrationally. So another reason would be to sort of help people understand the reality of their world, which I think is important. I think that if you don't wish to find what is real and what is not real, there's a lot of danger there if you think that sort of, you're happy following stuff that's not real.
Yeah, I mean, are you a father?
No.
Okay, I mentioned Zoubida's a mother, and a young child, and so that if you had a child, the child like blank slate or some event, you have to teach them the truths, and you might like why, and you keep on having no matter what you say is why, and a lot of times it's a relatively good question, and so if it's your child, you might have large amounts of patience to go into detail and explain things and be patient with long levels of understanding. First, if you're guru or teacher or just do-gooder, that you're willing to okay, I have a passion for Judaism, and maybe you don't believe that Judaism is objectively true, but I enjoy, if you use the word, I like Judaism. I consider it my duty. So I've explained simple concepts thousands of times, and I really never get tired of it. That even if someone new asks me basic questions in good faith, I don't mind explaining basic things again and again. Just like if I'm in public and someone asks me in good faith, a simple question like directions or some relative piece of information, or like I'm a good U.S. citizen, so if someone needs basic directions on understanding navigating the U.S. system, these are type things that I explain regularly over and over and over again, and don't get tired of. And so if you're looking at like debating flat Earth as in that venue, just like I mean, you're in the U.S., Mark?
No.
You
Okay.
can't
Did you
tell
want
by his accent he's from Australia?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, sorry, no, I didn't. But okay, so I mean, I don't know what the governmental system is, but if you're like a foreigner or a younger person, where you're just explaining how things work, it's like in the U.S., like elections or
Sure.
the tricameral governmental body, and it's like, okay, it's like you explain these things all the time, or like traffic rules, or how to get to some location in the public square. Literally, said your own child, that you would have a vested interest in, maybe even unlimited patience, that you could look at flat Earth, but at a certain point, like, okay, like I'm here for higher purposes, and like if it's like the Jerry Springers, I'm politically provoked, and they're making money, they got shows, they're getting super chats, and they're kind of they want to make a successful show, and they have some sort of formula. And it's like, nah, I'm a serious person. I don't want you to, just keep on setting me up to debate neo-Nazis, because it makes for a popular show, and they make money in super chats. And it's like, Jerry Springer, where people, we're just waiting for people to throw chairs at each other. And but for the producers, it's okay because they have a successful formula. So like, if you're thinking long term, you're a serious person, have serious ideas, that you have to start somewhere, and if you have to start with the flat Earth debate, or you're saying like long term, you're going to keep on debating flat Earth, and maybe it is something like that if it's a big issue, where flat Earth is such a thing, and it's something you've thought about, and you could clearly, logically explain to someone in good faith who doesn't understand it, or it's like something like atheism, evolution. Like I will debate atheism, evolution, basically with anybody in good faith, that if they wanted to set me up for any debate and it was a good faith conversation, I would basically say, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Yeah, but you feel that way about flat Earth, or do you have other issues that you actually do care about and you're more passion for talking about?
Yeah, so there's other issues I'd rather debate and get into debate with. Sort of the Christian versus atheism one is definitely one. Morality, I'm fine with. I'm doing a debate tomorrow on morality. That should be fiery, and
What venue is that?
It's like on Praise I Am channel. It's Smokey Saint, who absolutely hates me, but I hope to have a good conversation on morality and sort of explain what the benefits of secular morality are. I have a great belief in that secular society and secular morality is actually superior than its religious counterpart. So that is something that I do like to present because I believe in it, and I believe that religion has done a lot of harm to people. If that's,
we separate the enjoyment, where I said enjoyment isn't in and of itself worthwhile, but you're saying for a higher purpose, that you feel that you're somehow vindicating or fulfilling some sort of higher duty by arguing these causes for as like a general service. You're performing a general public good.
It doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. I mean, I don't see why I can't do what I see as morally correct, or at least.
Well, it's good to enjoy being a good person, but I'm saying like a higher duty that, because you say, oh, I do it because I enjoy it. Well, let's say I enjoy being a bad person, to say, well, I'm going to be a good person, even if I enjoy being a bad person. If I could, enjoy being a good person, all the better. But if I enjoy being a bad person, I'm going to, suffer. I'm going to miss out on my enjoyment and still try to be a good person. So, I mean, if you have a similar type view towards that you feel that there's some sort of higher duty you're fulfilling, towards a public good, whether you enjoy it or not.
Well, I think there's a higher duty, but I think there's only the higher duty that I place upon myself. There's things that I do that are morally good that I don't particularly want to do or get the same level of enjoyment out of as well. So it's not necessarily that I feel good about being a good person that is the reason why I do it. I think it's complex, and there's many reasons why I do it. I think that I can give my perspective. I feel good when I am able to state my position and express myself. I feel good for being a good person and doing the things that I feel are good for this world. However you define good and morality, we'll put that aside. But the things that I feel are beneficial for this world and humankind in general. But I also feel good when I disassemble logic problems and put together systems and structures that are useful. So there's multiple levels and multiple things happening here. And I don't see any reason why it should have to be one or the other. I think that a philanthropist who, does charity work by throwing a dinner, for instance, there can be many levels of why they're doing what they're doing. They may feel good about what they're doing, but they might also enjoy being at that dinner and talking with people. I don't think it's black and white as
I'm not saying that advancing your self-interest is intrinsically bad, but saying, okay, I do it because I enjoy it, leaves the room open. Well, what if you enjoy being a bad person?
Why is advancing your self-interest bad?
Well, I didn't say it is. But I'm saying that if advancing your own enjoyment could be bad because typically people have a tendency to enjoy doing bad things. So you say, I do it because I enjoy it. Say, well, are you going to do bad things if you enjoy it? So the question, well, I advance my self-interest. Me and Jennifer would put it within the ahimsa principle that obviously all people are motivated to advance their self-interest, and say that it's possible to advance your self-interest without a violation of the ahimsa principle, the non-harm principle. You could make a living, you could do business. To a certain extent, okay, like I'm a merchant, I sell things, and obviously, anything that I sold, I could have given away, and maybe it would have been more beneficial to the person who bought any of the items that I sold if I had just given it to them. But if I sell something to somebody at a fair market value of a product that they want, and it works or meets all the specifications, like my eBay, my great seller rating, they're saying it's not in my view, it's not a violation of the ahimsa principle. I acted in business in a fair way. I made my profit. I advanced my self-interest, and I didn't cause any harm, even though I could have, sort of say, been nicer. I could have just given the stuff away.
Right. Yeah.
And, so if you're looking at your streaming, that, like, okay, you didn't violate the ahimsa principle, cause any harm, you advance your own self-interest, it's possible that you could have, been more altruistic and advanced less of your self-interest. But, in terms of, a violation of the non-harm principle versus opportunity to advance one's own self-interest versus altruism is different than a violation of the ahimsa principles. Is like choosing to not be altruistic for one's own self-interest. I wouldn't. Some people could possibly define that as a violation of the non-harm principle. I think the majority school would say that choosing one's own self-interest over altruism is not a violation of the non-harm principle.
Well, I think that self-interest can lead to altruism all by itself.
Just every case zero sum. That, I mean, maybe you could give an example, but I'm saying, like, as a merchant, is there any scenario where it wouldn't have benefited the person I sold it more if I just given it to them as opposed to selling it to them? And saying, like, I didn't violate the non-harm principle by selling a good product at fair market value, but I could have been more altruistic in any of those cases by just giving it to them.
Right, but the harm then may have been to himself and to his family, who he has certain moral obligations to as well. He has to feed them, he has to provide shelter for them. And I think all humans have a list of things that they absolutely need, sort of self-actualization, safety and security. They used to put it in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I think they sort of spread it out now because that isn't really accurate. But all of these things, you can't exclude your own well-being and your own self-fulfillment from that. I mean, it's nice to be able to assist the well-being of others, and I use well-being as my metric. I'm a utilitarianism at my core, so I think that well-being is a good metric to analyze what we do and the effects that they have. You're using harm as a sort of negative utility, and I think that's fine. There's no problem with that. I generally tend to use as my utility a well-being as a positive utility.
Yeah, me and Jennifer have Hindu leanings, and we'll call it the ahimsa principle.
Right. There's no real difference between them. It's just you're using a negative version of it, and I'm just using the positive version, that I want to maximize well-being as much as possible.
We would interpret that largely as hedonism, egotistical hedonism.
Why would that be hedonism?
Because
if I'm trying to maximize well-being,
it's vague, and
it's vague
to hedonism. It's vague as a principle, yes, and it leads to hedonism.
Why is well-being vague?
Because of
well-being doesn't necessarily mean pleasure. You could even interpret well-being to mean the absent of harm.
Absolutely.
Well-being means like being healthy and fed and
safe
and sheltered, and that could be absent of pleasure or excess pleasure in terms of harm. That it would be harmful for a person to have less than their needs, and so well-being is just focusing on the needs being met.
Yeah, so I would define it as physical and psychological health. So it's not vague in the slightest. And as far as physical health, we're very aware of the things that humans need for physical health. We need food, we need water, we need shelter. We're aware of what the psychological needs of humans are, as love and self-actualization and comfort and all of these things. So
and who has love and self-actualization?
Me? What do you mean?
Oh, who has love and self-actualization? Well,
I mean, I have love from my wife, and I'm pretty aware of who I am, and I acknowledge both my capabilities, my strengths, and my weaknesses. So that's kind of self-actualization. It's saying, hey, I am human, a flawed person, but I do have things about me that are good and really amazing. So
Sounds like Christianity to me. Sorry. Oh, I've got all these flaws.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
it's not contradictory. I mean, utilitarianism arises in a largely Christian society.
Yeah.
Well,
I was
it's
gonna
also
say the
that I
secular
don't think my
atheism thing is Christian.
well, I don't think my flaws are sort of any kind of sin or any kind of detrimental thing.
It doesn't
that I
matter
have
what
to
you
be
think,
ashamed
Mark.
of.
It doesn't matter what you think.
Well,
Well,
this is
it's
not
almost
Being ashamed
scientific.
of dishonor is extremely good in my view, but I would never
You
say
you could
ought to
frame it
feel
in
the
a
same.
Maslowian scientific manner. I mean, self-actualization is elusive. You could never actually reach it, but you could have measurable, metrics of it, and saying you could always be a better person, but you could create clear metrics, goalpost to look at that, and if it's historically in a Christian framework, you could try to put that into philosophically, objective. That's what utilitarianism, you at least hope to accomplish in terms of governance. You could do your best to objectively create metrics.
Yeah. And the metrics are only as good as the people implementing the metrics, which are only as good as the paychecks, which basically anyone getting paid is basically, I don't want to say not credible, but, interpretation
metrics are objective. That's why I'm saying, like, expertise.
Metrics aren't objective.
Is objective because it's based on performance and task performance. Well, it's in, like, how people feel about things is subjective, but if you're looking at how you treat people and its task performance, you could have objective metrics like, okay, did you say thank you? Did you greet people? All these various things. You could say here was a task, and here was your performance. And even if it's just like pure utilitarians, like stopping at stop signs,
that doesn't then make it somehow
obeying rules.
Right? That doesn't make it objective. That's all I'm saying. I get it. You can have intersubjective lists.
It is
of
objective
things.
Because
sure.
it's
that
task
would be
performance.
Mighty convenient.
Well, I think some metrics can be objective and some can be subjective.
I deny that anything is objective.
If it's like coming to full stops at stop signs.
You can't even account for these objects you claim are real. So I challenge you to actually don't affirm these.
What do you mean I can't account for these objects?
Well, materialism can't account for the existence of objects.
Okay. I mean, I acknowledge that I have to
Show me an object.
Well,
objective. That means that it is independent of minds, right? Show me something independent of a mind.
Oh, okay. So you're basically going back to hard solipsism.
I'm saying that the mind is the fundamental metaphysical primitive on which all else is founded.
Well, I mean, that's why you're stopping at stop signs. So say whether Mark or me, we have minds or not, it could be objectively measured whether we obey traffic rules. And so it's task performance and, saying whether there's a mind that controls our action doesn't change the fact that there's a Doooovid, Mark, or Jen that gets in cars and either does or doesn't obey traffic signals or traffic rules or any various type rules that's objectively measured. If it's like, stealing, that whether
objectively measured, that's a contradiction in terms because a measurement is a subjectivization.
See, I can
because if anything is objective, it's the measurement limit.
Well, I was saying that a
machine program a drone to go out and sort of, cut away half a rock, and I can leave, and everyone can leave, and there's no minds around to see it do what it does.
How do you know there's no minds around? Because in my religion, it says we live in a mind. So why would I go against my religion?
But I say if you had a computer program that recorded people and how they obeyed traffic rules, that it doesn't take a human or a mind. You could have a machine that measures task performance, just like I was mentioning for expertise, like typing speed, how fast you type. Whether I have a mind or not doesn't change the fact that the machine could measure how fast I type.
We don't even need
Yeah.
to know the measurement. It can still objectively measure it.
Well, you can
And-
keep wishing that objectivity exists, but by your definition, it does. By any definition, it doesn't. But by both definitions, aka mine independent and objects actually existing, I can account for objects in my worldview. I don't think either of you can. I challenge again. Account for objects in your worldview such that you can demonstrate objectivity is possible in the first place.
Yeah, so I really think we should avoid going down this line during the debate, because we'll end up debating one another and not the
Are you not
opposition.
concerned that somebody on the other side could eventually challenge you on this and that you'd have nothing to push back with? You at least want to ground
I
it
do.
somehow.
Well, I say
I
Jennifer,
do.
if she wants to be like T-Jump, where you're promoting yourself and you're promoting
How am I being
yourself,
like T-Jump
maybe
right now?
maybe
I'm
as
trying
like
to help him.
a debate, a logic coach, and you're saying like, okay, I'm here now to teach you the fundamentals.
It's not about
of
that. It's about I don't want to have to
logic or
intercede
thought.
when he's getting grilled. I don't want to have to come in and make it look like I'm white knighting for him in the middle of the debate because I don't want to impact, his coolness on the public's face.
I think you're fine, Jen. I don't think you're going to have to white knight for anyone. I think that they're going to say things that are pretty horrible to try and get you angry, and because if you're angry and just having a sort of
a dumpster
Sorry?
fire.
yeah, well, I mean, nobody wins the dumpster fire. Nobody gets to show their opinions in the dumpster fire. I think that's what a lot of flat earthers do. They want a dumpster fire because
What the
nobody
channel
can-
does is saying that if you're saying winning is making money, attracting audience, getting attention, like in the U.S. the Jerry Springer show or something like that, where it's saying like what you really want is the people to start throwing chairs at each other, and it doesn't matter what the topic is. You just want to rile the people up enough that they start attacking each other. And
that's
so
not what I want. That's not what I want.
He's speaking hypothetically, as in what's going to put the asses in the seats, and I think it's more than just the proverbial chair throwing. It's sort of the, I don't know, something with derivatives. I still have to work out an exact formulation, but Doovid is not a big fan of the dumpster fires either. But
no,
they kind of follow
I'm a
time.
critic of humor, fun, happiness in general, and you put it straight to the Greeks, logos, pathos, ethos, and a venue like modern day debates is still maybe 30% pathos. Like in the commons it might be higher, it might be 50-60% pathos. Modern day debates that's somewhat an intellectual channel is still probably 30% pathos. And saying Doovid would prefer venues that are basically 0% pathos, and even so if you're among experts, it's almost all logos, not even ethos. And so if you're among experts, it might be 75% logos, 25% ethos. Modern day debates, you might have 10-20% logos, 50% ethos, 30% pathos, and the general public, you only have a few percent logos, the majority pathos, and a little bit of ethos. I mean, according to the Greek laying out. And so if you're trying to win elections or sway public opinion, you have to be a master of rhetoric, and you have to be a master of pathos. And so if you're an expert, or saying you deal with expertise, you could
Don't you
Oh,
remember how Adi Shankaracharya won his debate against the king?
Well, I mean, it's like just saying like, well, objectively, the best strategy is violence, and saying okay, but no, I don't think the best strategy.
Shankaracharya did.
That
Yeah, that's incredibly subjective, right? That the best answer to that is what you feel from your perspective is the best answer. But the idea that everything is subjective, everything is a makeup of your mind is just.
I never said
it's nonsensical.
that everything's a makeup of my mind. I said there's nothing independent of self. Self is all that can be known to exist is the technically accurate formulation.
Well, it depends if you're talking about absolute knowledge or not.
Well, known
Because-
implies knowledge, yes. And I'm not saying I endorse that view, but it is an unfalsifiable assertion. It's like saying the sphere is maximum entropy shape. It's like,
Well, I claim
I don't like that.
knowledge
I wish it
on-
was a sphere with a little, pimple on it. Dang.
I
It
mean,
doesn't matter what I think.
claim knowledge on multiple things because I have a justification. I believe that it's true. If the world is just a persistent and very convincing illusion, then I don't have knowledge about anything. But I'm not convinced
Well, you'd
that's
have
the
the knowledge.
case.
You could have the
And
knowledge.
are you arguing that the world is an illusionary place?
Yeah, Maya is an attribute of material. This is a
So
well-known
everything is illusionary. I mean, we're
No,
going
I
into
said Maya
hard
is an
solid.
attribute of material. You're saying material is the only thing that exists. I'm saying no.
I
in your
never said
worldview.
that.
Well, you're saying everything's an illusion. That is not accurate. There are some things which are.
I
perceived
didn't say that.
forever.
I asked if you believe that.
I don't, and I don't know why you would ask it, because
Okay.
all I said is.
So
that the
how do you
material world-
know? How do you
because I have
know?
knowledge. No.
You know because you have knowledge. That's a circular argument. There's nothing.
I guess it is, but
that's
because I
a
can bang out
tautology.
those predictions, like some
What
sort of machine
predictions?
gun of science, it
What
doesn't really matter
predictions?
if
What
it's
predictions?
self-referential.
What predictions?
Predictions. How many times have we been over this? Okay.
Yeah, and just sort of saying, hey, my model accounts for something that's already known is not a prediction.
Yeah, why
Because
don't you
you-
repeat this? I'm saying, like, I mean, general, it's supposed to just, like, agree to disagree, find out what you agree on, find out what you disagree on, and then come up with a strategy for interaction. Because, I mean, very rarely do you actually change people's mind on what you disagree about. So you just,
I
agree.
think the issue is that Mark doesn't really understand my position because he hasn't read my blog, but he thinks he's going to debate me about it, and that's a misapprehension.
We don't have to debate. It's just agree to disagree.
Yeah, exactly.
And saying, okay, if you want to disagree, in terms of like change each other's mind or understand, you just, okay, we're just going to have to agree to disagree and move on.
I don't intend to go down my line of reasoning here, but feel free. So if it feels like the other person is taking me down the direction you're not comfortable with, i.e. this one right now or anything else, feel free to like either DM me or intercede in the convo, and I'll just seed, and you can just
Tag you in.
Yeah. I mean, I want to learn how to be a team player. That's one of my things I'm working on is better team playing. I'm
Yeah.
a bit of a
No, that's okay. I think that's good. That's very, very, we're going to have to, especially in, when I've worked on projects and stuff like that, you have to work with people that you just don't like, and I know that you don't hate me, but, it's just, we disagree on almost everything besides this point. And,
Well, if you're in engineering, I'm saying like that you.
And has no bearing on how much I like you.
You establish, basically you just divide it up. You have an assignment and you divide it up and then you trust that the other person is going to be able to adequately do the portions that have been assigned to them. And if you have working experience, that the person has established credibility to do the job. And then you come back and go over what the person did, and put it together. And you just if the person has credibility, you don't even need to double check. Saying like an engineering field or a business field, that the person did what was assigned to them, and then you could put it together for the larger project without even double checking their answers if they have established credibility, and saying you don't actually have to like the person, and it's like okay, I'm a merchant, and people don't check whether they like me or not. They check my seller's rating, and they say if I have a good seller's rating, that's a high probability that they're going to get the product as described, the product that they want in the condition that they want, and whether they like me or not is irrelevant to their desire, because they're not purchasing the product from because they like me. They're purchasing the product because it's something they want, and they want to get at a fair price in as described in the condition. And for something
think that's
intellectual
really
like
good
teaming up in a
advice.
debate, that okay, you both of you have your arguments, and saying you don't have to agree or like each other. If you just think that the other person's credible to fulfill the task they're given, and then if it's like you don't think the person's credible, then it's probably a bad deal, or sometimes it may not matter. If it's just like you're going to give your argument, you're going to give your intro, she's going to give her intro, and then you're going to ask questions to each other. I mean, to the other people, and if they ask, and so even if you completely disagree with each other or don't even like each other, or any of the other things, it doesn't even matter towards the formed debate. It's basically just like taking turns.
Right, and I think that's good advice. That I mean, I'm obviously focusing on the materialist arguments, and so Jen can focus on the more sort of metaphysical or spiritualistic kind of arguments, and arguments from a pure rational standpoint. Would
I
you
want to go
agree?
from an intuitivist perspective, and
Intuitivist, yeah.
feel free to like whatever, signal me, we can talk about it later if you think it's going to the point of like nobody's going to know what the hell this is even about.
Well, I mean, I trust that you will represent your position really well. So even though I disagree with your position, I think you have a right to express that position, and just sort of, I trust that you will express your position, to the best of your ability.
Oh, thanks. You too.
Even if you're both listening to each other and you're just like, oh man, completely wrong. Everything he or she said was completely wrong.
I don't think his arguments are wrong. I just think they could be a lot stronger.
Well, I'm saying you could just bite your tongue and sit through it and take turns, and saying usually in the modern day debate, during the discussion period, it will be directed where they'll specifically ask you or Mark, and then the few times, depending on the other people, whether they just ask something openly to the both of you or directly. So if they ask directly, either you or Mark, it doesn't matter. You could just take turns and respond when they do. And if they ask something open-ended, then you have to have some sort of understanding of either taking turns where you're both going to address it and take turns, or to say this is more my Mark or Jen's field of expertise, and so on the spot where they ask an open-ended question for either one of you, that sometimes maybe you take turns and both say something, and then other times where it'll be clear to you two that only one of you needs to answer the question and who that one person should be.
That's good advice. You know what? I have to go. I want to get some lunch before I get hangry at Jen.
Yeah, great.
I'm joking, Jen. I'm joking.
It was 11 o'clock here in
There's one
Michigan.
last thing I wanted to say. Do you know how long our intros are?
No idea.
Okay, so we're really not expecting this to be anything other than a dumpster fire, are we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So are you preparing an intro or no?
I'm basically tomorrow I'm going to go through just a series of points that I want to go through. I could do slides and stuff. I'm not sure I really want to do that. I've only got like 3 things that I really want to present, and that's about it. Then we can go into the open discussion. I don't know. I don't think that they're going to be doing anything, sort of presentation wise. So I don't know. I'm not taking this debate that seriously. It's just a flat Earth debate. It's nothing huge.
You're better off, at least appearing to have a united front. And if you do disagree with each other, will you say that's not how I understand it?
Sure.
And then either just take turns and don't focus on what you think's wrong with Jennifer or Mark, and just take turns. That's not how I understand it. Here's how I understand it.
How about we just don't say anything? Any disagreeing with me is going to throw me off my game.
Yeah, Yeah,
And
no,
I won't
I
correct you
can-
unless you make an egregious error. I'm sorry, but if there's an egregious error, which I don't think there will be, I will.
You think
mention it, but
everything
only
I
in
say is an egregious error?
That is not accurate. Okay, listen to me. I agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying it's not the strongest form of the argument that you can make, and there's all these holes that you wouldn't
If you
want
don't know how to
accidentally be
complement
stuck
each other,
defending.
if you don't know how
That's
to
okay.
complement each other, you're going to make each other look
This is
worse,
not-
and
I'm
you're
not gonna
better
speak
off
to him this
just
way in the
taking
debate.
turns.
Look,
If
Jen, you
you're
don't
both
have to
That's
submitting
think
probably
my
true.
or
argument
complimenting
is.
each other, then that will be optimal. If you can't complement each other and are going to detract from each other, you're better off just taking turns, and even if there's no correspondence between what the two said, and just you took a turn and said what you want, then she took a turn and said what she wants, it's going to be better than contradicting each other.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not
absolutely.
planning on contradicting. No, I wasn't.
Look, I think we'll be
No, I don't.
fine. I think
Yeah, me too.
Jem's airing stuff at the moment that she wouldn't in the middle of a debate. I think she's
That's
just.
the whole point. Yeah, but in
Well,
terms
and it's
of
also, I mean, if you
intro,
like debate, it's kind of probably, like a testing ground. If you have a good performance,
Sure.
you get more requests, and to a certain extent, like you're in the low tier modern day debate lineup where you're doing flat earth. If you have a good performance, be more likely that they book you for a main event on a topic of your choosing. And so it's kind of performance based, and so it pays to put on your best performance, and usually that you have to be liked and respected among your peers, including the people you disagree with. So you have to be liked and respected by the viewers, and also liked and respected by the fellow debaters and participants. And you make an active effort towards being cordial, professional, and saying to the audience, like, good job, and even your opponents saying good job, and your partners, and then other people watching. Saying I want to see Mark and Jen again. Where maybe you'll be the full debater, and other people debating that they want to go up against you, and then even where you eventually will be able to so to say be the star and the topic of your choosing, with even like the high caliber opponents. So it's it's largely probably performance
That is
based.
true. Yeah, no, that is true. But I also want to have fun. There's not like I do want to have fun while I'm doing it. I think enjoyment is not if as long as I'm not harming anybody, as long as I'm not sort of affecting anybody else's well-being, I'm fine to have fun, and I find
Well,
it
I say
fun.
it's like, okay, like if being a bad person is fun to you, but it's that you might not want to have fun, but then if it's question performance based, that in all likelihood the future debates and working together is going to be based on your performance. So you say, what is fun versus is there a conflict between fun and some sort of larger objective measurement of your performance in determining the likelihood that
that's
they're
a
going
very
to
long debate, and I think Mark said he was getting hungry. So
Yeah,
the
that's
likelihood
okay.
that they're going to
And
book you
if we're
for
still
future
going-
debates.
if we're
That's
still
okay.
going when he's
Look.
done, we can come back on.
If they
Yeah,
do, they
I will
do.
wrap
If they
up 'cause
don't, they
I
don't.
got
I
stuff
don't
to do
really
tomorrow.
mind. It's fine.
If you want to say
Thank you
some
so
final
much.
words, go ahead, Mark. And people, I have the link to the modern day debate. I already put it in the description, so anyone watching, could will hopefully see you Saturday night. But any final words, feel free.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you, Doovid. I really appreciate you setting up and doing this. It's been fun. I disagree. I've had a really interesting conversation. So it's been great. So I want to thank you, and of course thank Jen, who I'm sure will be the paragon of professionalism and grace and charm in the debate. I think you'll be wonderful. You'll be wonderful, Jen. You'll be wonderful.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it'll be fun. That's in a couple of days, I think, if I've got my calendar right. And again, David, thank you so much. It was really good to meet you.
Okay, yeah, great. Good luck, and hopefully we'll see you again. If you want to pop on Week in Review to discuss how it goes, or do another of these Thursday night debate preps, you're more than welcome.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, any final words, Jennifer? or is there anything else you want to discuss?
I'm just worried about this. I feel like I'm going to be stuffed into a corner. Yeah. Do you understand my argument? Or materialism, empiricism, denial of metaphysics, no means to justify a spherical planet. Only thing that can be justified is flat through direct experience. How do you justify anything non-directly sense perceptual if you're an empiricist, quote unquote?
Yeah, the logic, the empiricism, the epistemology, ontology.
Which means if he gets jammed up on that, I got to intercede, which is cringe.
I don't think you have to intercede.
Knighting.
I'm saying, you just take turns.
I don't know. Yeah, okay.
I'm saying, like, it's going to probably be bad for you and your performance and cause people to look at you negatively. Just take turns. You're not there to correct him. You're not even really there to correct your opponents.
It's not about that. It's about a certain standard to which my audience has become accustomed.
Yeah, I'm saying that. So, talk to your audience and forward your ideas.
Certain errors are too egregious to linger unacknowledged, and I really don't think that's going to be an issue. I just wanted to mention it.
Yeah, you have to, say you could negotiate your style, decide your style, and then test your style and saying performance based. That
I feel like trying the Adi Shankaracharya method because I want to do a proof of concept.
So you see that like results are results. So you could experiment, and presumably
you're taking a substantial risk, but yeah, maybe some.
Well, you have to take your opportunities you're given. So if all you're given is a flat Earth debate and you decide to take it, at least you're given an opportunity, and hopefully if you perform well, it'll lead to something better. It's probably a semi-bad sign that, that's what they're giving you, but, saying it's still an opportunity, it's still something. And, so once you have that opportunity, you could turn it into something, better. So, like if you would rather have the topics that you prefer to be talking about, and you can't work with other venues to forward these topics, you could work with them on topics that you don't really enjoy, and then you have to either find different venues or build up your own venue. And generally saying be agreeable, work with everybody, and that's why I try to teach you how to monologue or channel to yourself. That you stream, you make your post show.
Yoga Chittavriti Niroda. What do you think Niroda means? I'm not going back to non-Niroda once I achieved it. Why would I go back? You're saying invent some non-perfection. It's like, no. I'll fix other people who want to be fixed. I'm not going to hallucinate this.
Well, I'm saying you have to perform in a public venue, and then a certain amount of the people will come back to your venue, and so you should have I don't know if you're going to do a post show, and so if you put a good performance on, people will be interested, and they'll migrate to your channel.
Oh yeah, that's great.
And then professional that saying, okay, I'm a professional venue. I'm not there to promote myself. I'm there to fulfill the task as given, and be professional about my duty. That saying it's not about me, it's about the task, and know the circumstance that very rarely is it about me, and the times where it is about you, then it could be about you when you get people to migrate to your channel or a venue, and usually it becomes about you when you properly perform your task. When you recognize it's not about you and properly perform your task, that will create more times and opportunity when it is actually about you.
And I want that, right? Is that what you're saying?
Um,
Or you want that, maybe?
it may or may not matter the desire, saying that's a process, and
Yes, I know. What did
whether you
Krishna
want
said?
it to be
Krishna
about
had
you
a
or
quote
not.
on it.
You're saying,
Yeah.
okay, you fulfill your duty, you get more duties.
Yes, it's
You
quite
fulfill
nice.
your duty properly. So I mean, just focus on fulfilling your duty, and saying, so it's like saying, if you signed up for a flat Earth debate, you signed up for a flat Earth debate, and you should perform your duty, as prescribed. And so if you're upset that your duty is a flat Earth debate, certainly not
I'm not.
performing the duty properly will make it worse.
I'm happy that I get an opportunity to improve my
Yeah,
rhetoric.
so if you don't play with well with others, you're not good at working with others. You're either going to work at the skill and improve.
I'm good
or-
at getting things done, so I do think I'm effective at collaborating with certain people.
Well, I'd say if you're just good at fulfilling your task, and then you could work together with other people when the tasks are divided. It's not the same as working well with others.
Well, there's more than just divide and conquer as a possible model. But yeah, that would be probably opening up a can of worms if you want to wrap this up in the next 10 years. So
Yeah, you could pop off and then I'll monologue a little bit. I want to talk more about the historic Jesus.
yeah, it was great to catch that, and thanks so much for hosting, and look forward to the debate. Till then.
Okay, yeah, thanks Jennifer for coming on, and hopefully get some debate prep, and Mark, and so hopefully developed a little bit of synthesis and cohesion that they'll be able to work well together. If there's any questions in the chat, I see High T and Judas. I'm not sure if you caught the conversation with Adam Green. So I'd put up my let me put this up again, and my diagram that I put up about the historic Jesus. So I think the Adam Green show went pretty well. We had a pretty good audience, almost 200 people live on Odyssey, and Adam said he wants to do again next Thursday. So it appears that me and Adam should be scheduled for next Thursday. Maybe we'll even go longer. He did kind of like his regular show where he was just going over his verses, and kind of like he wants to preach his own game, or he wants to convince people his own ideas, as opposed to putting our minds together to understand the topic at a deeper level, no matter where the facts lead us. So if the facts lead us to one or the other to recognizing that our understanding isn't as good as we thought it was, that that's the purpose of study, is to get closer to the truth. And so if you want to preach, or you just want to do so, I'm more a scholar. I'm not I feel my duty. I love the Jewish people, and I take a pro-Jewish stance, and was happy to do that. Although in reality, I'm mostly trying to advance a further understanding. And I think Adam said he's going to be on Politically Provoked on Monday. Jennifer and Mark, kind of like Charles Mott, they were like networking, promoting, booking is somewhat complicated. You have to move past yourself and just say to make good content. So like I want to move into booking debates, and even maybe booking Adam Green for modern day debate. I wasn't able to mention that with Jennifer or Mark, because I whatever their level of consciousness at the point was not really into a larger picture of trying to create good debate content. And to do that, you know, like Charles Moskowitz is saying, like, you have to understand what the other person actually said. I mentioned the flowing method, you know, Thursday night debate prep, that you should accurately be able to express the other person's argument in a way that if they heard it, they would say, yes, this person accurately understood and expressed what they said. And then to say that my own side of the argument or what I believe does not necessitate me falsely expressing what the other person was trying to say. That I don't need to, you know, straw man Adam's argument to forward my own arguments, like with Charles Moskowitz or something like that, with you know, the various things where I mean, that's why he does it, and it's fine. Most people who stream, you know, because they want to get out their message, but it's just kind of like, you know, he's waiting his turn till he gets to do his Hasbora, as opposed to trying to understand the issue at a deeper level through abstract thought, which requires understanding that my own biases and my own understanding is flawed. And so here I just have a few of the possibilities and a few of the different schools, and then actual academic research that, like, you know, Jennifer, like, you know, it's saying that if you publish a scientific paper, you have to do the historical review. You have to go over the previous great minds and their opinions, and a review of the current theories on the market and where your idea fits in that. And so if it's Adam Green, who is, you know, said, like, that I mentioned to him, almost all of Adam Green's arguments are arguments that were mentioned in the debate between Nicholas Dunnan and Yechiel Meperes. So let me put this up. I think I've see if I could find it. So Yechiel Meperes, Nicholas Dunnan. I'm sorry, I'm just so I mean, mentioning that, you know, so the disputation of Paris of 1240 between Nicholas Dunnan and Yechiel Meperes, and there was a trial, and I think it's recorded that the disputation of Paris had like 30 points of questions, and I've read these things. I mentioned it on Charles Moskowitz before, so I'd have to see these papers. But, you know, there's like 30 questions or so that were asked, posed to Yechiel Meperes, and almost all of what Adam Green is asking me are points that were asked in these previous debates, and also the disputation of Barcelona between Pablo Cristiani and Nachmanides. That these are recorded. Like, it's not necessary that Adam Green didn't come up with some new theory, and even maybe Christopher Van Jerkness has somewhat of a new theory. So I apologize. I have to prepare better, so I'm not going to keep on searching for it now. But you're saying that Adam Green's questions about the Talmud and Judaism are not new points. These are points that people have made over thousands of years. Cicero, Tacitus, Charlemagne, generation and generation, that I mentioned that that these keep occurring. And then even his question, like, even though he's kind of like anti-Christian, he kind of was hitting me for the Jesus as Messiah. So he was giving me verses that tend to show that Jesus is Messiah, and I was saying that they're generic understandings of karmatic processes according to Judaism, and God forbid, Jewish history is full of martyrs almost every generation. So he was talking about predictions of martyrdom or suffering that, God forbid, we have a lot of sages and a lot of martyrs, and, history is full of it. And even the questions that were being asked are, that led to the Talmud being burned, that led to the redactions, that led to possibly us not knowing the history. So from his perspective, if he just wants to keep advancing his own agenda, I mean, that's fine. That's probably why he streams. That's why he does what he wants to do, because he has, ideas and agenda that he wants to advance. But if he wants to be a good debater, he has to understand how his idea fits into the pantheon of ideas, and how his idea corresponds with the available evidence. And for his purposes or preaching, or if he's going to forward an argument, of course he's going to cherry pick the pieces of evidence that best back up what he's trying to say. But Doovid, as an independent scholar, I'm not trying just to advance one agenda. I'm trying to serve God. I'm trying to get to truth. So I'm willing to look at all of the possibilities and try to put the evidence in totality into perspective, to understand the issue. And then multiple true hypothesis, saying that I don't think I'm going to solve this. Like Christopher Van Jorkness, who thinks he solved it. He solved the riddle of Judaism, and he weaved his own narrative about the secret intention and meaning of Judaism, and all these various possibilities. He's X'd off the ones that he thinks are false and the ones that are true, and he has his pieces of evidence, and a lot of them are so to say cherry picked, and they're not even really consistent, where he's taking some evidence from certain ideas and ignoring others, and largely to support his narrative, as opposed to an objective analysis of all the available information, and recognizing that that we can't really solve these ancient riddles. And so any good debate, you have to validate the opposing side. You have to recognize the areas of uncertainty, and then from a rhetorical school say, okay, well, me and Adam are in opposite schools. I'm a believer, and like I said, he was saying, didn't all this stuff benefit the Jews? I'm like, well, that's music to my ears. That if these prophecies, after generations of suffering, Shimon Bar Yochai, escaping for his life, hiding in a cave for 12 years, almost being killed by the Romans, when his contemporaries were tortured to death, and then thousands of years later, his predictions coming true. I'm saying, well, that's like music to my ears. A vindication, and I take that to mean that God is behind the Jewish religion, that vindication. I'm not just doing this stuff because of group strategy or because of bias. I'm doing this because I'm honestly serving God, and the God who created the whole world. That's how he runs the world. And even these concepts of Esau and Jacob, that if you say, according to the Jewish religion, you could say it's a legend, it's allegorical, or it's factual. And so I mentioned that from a day-to-day, as a Jew, we have the law to follow, and the laws of Esau, they're not really laws of Esau, they're allegorical understandings about how the world operates. And maybe for negotiations or group strategy, you talk about it sometimes, but the concept that is clearly written, that God blessed Esau, and Esau, let me put this off, Jacob's blessing to Esau. So after Isaac finished blessing him, Jacob, and he scarcely left his father present, his brother Esau came to him in from hunting. This is Genesis chapter 27. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father, and then said to my father, sit up and eat some of my game, so that I may give you your blessing. His father Isaac asked him, who are you? I am your son, he answered, your firstborn Esau. Isaac trembled violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him. Indeed, he will be blessed. When Esau heard his father's word, he burst out with loud and bitter cry and said to my father, bless me too, my father. But he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Esau said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? He has deceived me these two times. He took my birthright, and now he has taken my blessing. Then he asked, haven't you reserved any blessing for me? Isaac answered Esau, I have made him lord over you, and made all his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son? Esau said to my father, do you only have one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. Then Esau wept aloud. His father Isaac answered him, your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness and away from the dew of the heavens. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw off the yoke from your neck. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near, then I will kill my brother Jacob. But I mean, this concept here of Genesis 27:40, you will live by the sword and you will serve your brother, but when you grow restless, you will throw off your yoke from your neck. That's the Judaic understanding, and it's a double-edged sword, and Esau and Jacob sometimes work together, and then Esau and Jacob are sometimes in opposition, and according to the Kabbalists, it's based on our behavior. And, not to put that Esau has no free will in the matter, that Esau is, basically reciprocating that is based on Jacob's behavior. The Jewish people, if we behave properly, Esau will work for our benefit, and if we behave poorly, that Esau will work against our interest. That's the way that God described the system according to the prophecy there in Genesis chapter 27. So I mentioned that, we went over that. Is it true or not? That's the legend of our religion, and it doesn't necessarily have an influence on our action. So, okay, I try to be the best person I can, not so that Esau will serve me, but because my service to God and my understanding of how God runs the world, through based on what the sages said. And then, like I said, the sages, according to the Hebrew sages, there really isn't that much about Jesus, that Jesus is somewhat inconsequential. However, the prophecies talk about Esau and the role of Esau, and the sages understand that the church is under the dominance of Esau. So so I was trying to express the Judaic, I'll call the mainstream Kabbalistic perspective, and so Adam could have his own perspective, and that's fine. That's why it's a debate. That's why it's a conversation. But then, in terms of even trying to book and train Adam for future debates, even though I disagree with him, say that Christianity or these various questions. But I think it was a good conversation, and hopefully it was beneficial. We'll see the feedback. It looks like Adam wants to continue the discussion next Thursday, so happy to do that. If instead of like hitting me surprised with all these verses, maybe we could discuss make better content by discussing beforehand than him just hitting me on the spot with a bunch of his research. I mean, that's fine. Also, if he enjoys doing the content, I guess it's kind of fun for me to hear his preparation without my preparation. But I think to some extent we could make better content if it was more directed and based off abstract thought and understanding what each other is saying, than actually just keep on trying to promote what I'm saying and him keep on trying to promote what he's saying. So hopefully looking forward. Jennifer, Saturday night on Modern Day Debate, Flat Earth. Maybe we'll do a post stream. Zoubida, if she's around. I wrote a song about Zoubida El Arabia. And I actually have like a whole chorus and lines. Kind of weird because I did that rap and then I was driving and I had like a few rhymes that came to my head. And so I actually have a whole full song that has like a chorus and verses. And I could do it. I could probably do it like a rock song or a rap song, but I think she likes rap. So I'll do it as a rap. So if she invites me maybe Saturday night. Oh, Claire is going to be interviewed on Politically Provoked on Saturday night, 6:00. And then, so Zoubida invites me. I might come on and I'll share my song with Zoubida, then, Modern Day Debate. Maybe Jennifer will do a post show. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't pay for a post Flat Earth debate. But then, hopefully we'll have a lively week in review. And Jennifer booked me on a Discord, Ask Me Anything on a philosophy server. I shared that link in my Discord on Wednesday. And, so then hopefully Thursday, I'll be back with Adam Green and we'll continue talking about the historical Jesus. And, hopefully we'll look at it from a more academic level. If he just wants to hit me with his quotes, I guess that's kind of what Quibbles was saying about Brandon Martinez, where he's just like quote after quote after quote, as opposed to a more abstract understanding of, what are you quoting? What are these sources? What is the totality of what you're saying versus the totality of the evidence, not just saying the totality of the quotes that you cherry picked to benefit your argument, but the totality of your quotes in relation to the totality of the evidence available. So that takes quite a bit of scholarship to know the totality of the evidence available. So, hopefully Thursday night we'll continue with that. I appreciate Adam platforming me, and I like the historical Jesus. Maybe even if Adam wanted to debate me on Politically Provoked, I would do it. But if he wants to set up with another opponent, that might make more sense. And, I don't mind having more academic, so to say, more friendly conversations. And then next Sunday, the Sunday after this, I will be on with Ben Watkins on Theology Unleashed, and we will be talking about evidence for the soul. So hopefully that'll be good. Ben Watkins also said that maybe Adam could get into his circuit of atheists and Christians that they've been debating, and he will take this approach of Christianity as a Jewish psyop. So, there's various atheist schools and Christian schools. So if Adam wants to come in the school like Christianity is a Jewish psyop, certainly that's a historical perspective. And I don't even mind promoting it because, as a believer perspective, to say like, yes, like not that it was a psyop, but that God was behind it. And as I said, that like Maimonides says in the rule, in the laws of Messiah, that eventually the true Messiah will come and Islam and Christianity will be beneficial to the world because the world will understand about the concept of Messiah from their understanding of Christianity and Islam and the basic biblical prophecy that at the end of the days, half the nations will be under the influence of Esau and half the nations under the influence of Ishmael. And, just to advance a little bit of a, called the mainstream biblical prophecy, Kabbalistic understanding. So, I'm doing a lot of research on neuroscience, philosophy, mostly neuroscience, and the hard problem of consciousness from the physical perspective. So I'm constantly reading on that. And, there's a lot of information about psychology, neuroscience, neuropsychology, the human brain. So, I've been researching that now a few years, and I'll probably continue to research. I'm still doing a lot of research on COVID-19, although I'm not sure what exactly I'll share about that. Although I'm going to check out, I think Ryan Dawson was on Killstream tonight talking about the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. So I'm actually interested in checking that out. And So I guess that's about it. Like in Doooovid trying to move into booking agent. So I'm happy Zoubida came on. So I mean, Zoubida's a smart woman, and I think she just has one of these hostile personalities. And I knew a lot of religious. Like I have my verses. Zoubida, the little girl from Iraq with the green eyes, she's not scared to get in your face and tell you that everything you say is lies. Zoubida El Arabia should get in your face and call you a liar. Zoubida from Arabia, she's not scared to tell you what you're doing is going to cause you hellfire. So I actually have whole rap of rhymes I prepared for Zoubida, but it's saying that's just her, so to say, confrontational personality, where she's going to inform you that, I'm sorry, what you're doing is wrong. You can't get away with doing that sinful action, and it will lead to hellfire. And so I know a lot of religious people. They're essentially nice people, but they're confrontational in that manner. So I think it was positive having Zoubida on, and maybe I'll work with her together. Also, she's young and talented, and definitely So I'm happy she came on and had a positive experience. I think she's going to like the song. It's a little bit harsh on her, that maybe she'll see how harsh she appears to others, but I think she'll like it actually, because I think she enjoys being harsh and passion. That's her, that she wants to put her passion in fashion, and so hopefully I'll share those rhymes on Friday after Sabbath if she's streaming. So I'm going to sign off. God bless. Thanks for tuning up. Yeah, I mean, Judas, I guess a friend of me. So is that he's a friend of me because he's always chiding me, or is he my friend because he has my best interest at heart? So he's my friend of me if he doesn't have my best interest. He's just chiding me and constantly rebuking me, and it's unclear whether we're enemies or not. And so we're frenemies, or saying no, we're friends, and he has my best interest at heart, and that's why he rebukes me. So trying to judge Zoubida positively, just like Judas, that's their style, and that's their way of being friends. I actually even have a rhyme like that, even though she's going to tell you everything what's wrong with you to the end, that's just her way of being your friend. So with that, have a great week. Shabbat shalom. Tomorrow also, I should be on Chris in London. He messaged me. He came on Week in Review Sunday. He was on Zoubida's and Ralph's, and I think he's been off Joseph Cohn, and so the British nationalist. I'm not exactly sure. He told me he was into Buddhism and the Dalai Lama, but 3:00 Eastern time before Sabbath, I think 9 p.m. London time, we're going to be talking. So I'm not exactly sure what media. I think he got kicked off of YouTube, so he might be on alternative platforms. So hopefully I'll share that on Twitter. So if you follow me on Twitter, I'll try to share that. So I should be talking with Chris in London tomorrow, and I guess he's part of Patron Front with Mark Collett. So should be interesting. And so take care. Shabbat shalom. Have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Adam for having me on. Look forward to next Thursday. Hopefully people enjoyed that show. Anyone that watched me on Adam and came to my channel, will welcome, and check out more of my content, and look forward to next Thursday. Thanks to Mark for joining my channel, and Jennifer, as always, pleasure to keep on working together with her, advancing these theories, and so hopefully things are going to start popping off, and you're going to see Doooovid all over the place. And so not only will you see me doing more streaming, I might start putting out more streams on my channel, some of my own research. You might see me more on other channels, and then I'm also trying to become more of a booking agent, where I'll be setting other people up on other channels for various shows. So very excited about that. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.